I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, this meeting is being televised by Chelmsford Media. Is there anyone else present that plans to record? Seeing none. Welcome. Before we start, I just want to recap a few things that we discussed in our last meeting on August 7th. Unfortunately, that night, Chelmsford Telemedia had another meeting that they needed to tape, so there was no broadcast or tape of that meeting. So I thought it would be good to highlight a few of the actions that were taken during that time. Firstly, we were introduced to the new assistant principal at McCarthy Middle School, Carrie Calabrese. We reviewed and approved updates to the district and the high school student parent handbooks. We reviewed some of last year's school committee goals, and we'll be setting new goals at our next meeting. We discussed the superintendent evaluation process, and we'll be continuing with that tonight. Superintendent gave a report on Chelmsford Public Schools for the 2017-18 school year. We discussed how we want to conduct public input at our meetings, and we'll be discussing that again in more detail later tonight. We approved changing the job title and job description of the Director of Guidance Services to Coordinator of Social Emotional Learning and Counseling Services, and approved a new ICTS Solutions Engineering position. We approved new school committee policies in area of personnel and negotiations, and finally we discussed how we were going to host our policies once they're all approved, and we decided that we would employ the service of MASC to do that once all of the policies are up online. So it was a very productive meeting. We got a lot of things done. So I just want to kind of give people an update since there's no real record of that.
Dennis,
Yep.
I sent the minutes to Deb over probably 9 or 10 days ago, so I'm surprised that they're not included tonight on the consent agenda.
they'll be on the next agenda.
Oh, okay, she did get them though.
Yep, we
Oh,
received
okay, since they weren't here, I thought, oh no. did I
Yep.
forget
No, they'll
to
be on the
send?
next agenda.
Okay.
Great. The only thing I want to just
Yeah.
add is tonight is the first night that our meetings are actually going to be, we switched over to the education channel. So our regular school committee meetings are now going to be still live, and they're still recorded, but we switched from the municipal channel over to the education channel, and that's where we're going to stay going forward. There was some conflicts on Tuesday evenings with different town boards that had meetings scheduled. And instead of flip-flopping back and forth between the municipal channel and the school channel, we've just decided to move totally over to school. So we'll be on that channel. Our replays will play typically the Tuesday and Wednesday of each week. But then in talking to Telemedia, they are also going to put us on the weekend loop on the municipal channels. So replays will still play on municipal channel as well. But if anyone wants to watch us live, I know we're a popular show. They'll have to watch on the education channel instead of the regular one, and that'll be that way going forward.
Okay, next up, we have public comment. If you would like to speak to the committee, please come forward, state your name and address for the recording secretary. So anybody would like to come up and address the committee? Okay, seeing none, move on. Any good news?
Yeah, so I'm just going to do a recap of the last meeting. We weren't on TV, so I just wanted people to know that a lot of work has been done in the schools. Teams of teachers have been meeting to work on curriculum writing, get some professional development that's been going on. So even though the schools have been closed down, there's still a lot of excitement that's happening with getting ready for the school year, and people are feeling very, very confident to start the school year. And obviously the good news is school starts next week.
Okay, I guess next we're going to move on to new business.
Yeah, first item on the agenda this evening is actually a presentation on a new options-based response in an emergency type setting. Let me give you a little bit of background, and then we'll invite some individuals to come up and talk. But as an admin group over the course of this past school year, we identified several critical issues in the district that we wanted to work on, and a lot of time was spent last year on them. So we talked earlier during the budget process about the therapeutic program, the STRIVE program that was going to take place this year at South Row. We'll talk a little bit about that later on tonight under a report out. We had a committee that worked on updating all of our handbooks, our student and staff handbooks at the elementary, middle, and high school. For the first time, again, we kind of solidified some of our personnel manual into a new handbook. That was a group. And the fifth group that actually worked was on move internally during emergency responses from our traditional lockdown methodology to more of an options-based or an ALICE response. So tonight, we actually, from the school department, we have Kelly Rogers, who is our district-wide coordinator for ELL, Title I services, and reading at the elementary level, and some other school administrators. I'll let Kelly introduce the school folks, and Police Chief Spinney, and when you come up, I'll let you introduce your command staff that's with you, to share a little bit of some highlights about what that transition is going to be. We have a little PowerPoint, a little video to show you, and then as we roll this out over the course of the fall, we'll talk a little bit about that in the end and how we're actually going to communicate with the public and our families as we get into the school year. So Kelly and Chief Spinney, if you'd like to come up with your staff, and if you want to pull chairs up, however you'd like to do it, it's totally up to you.
I'll introduce them when.
Okay.
Okay, great. Like Dr. Lang said, that we're implementing a new safety protocol here in Chelmsford. We're just transitioning to the traditional lockdown to a more proactive, option-based approach. And we chose Alice as the safety protocol that we'll be using. And I'll tell you a little bit about what Alice is and what it means. It's actually an acronym. So it's basically thinking about how are we going to prepare individuals or organizations to proactively handle any threat of an aggressor or an intruder. And unfortunately, we do have to be thinking about these situations. And what's nice too is this thinking about how this you can implement this in a school setting, if you're out at the mall, if you're, at a hospital or a church setting as well. So it's how are you going to respond to any sort of active aggressor or intruder? And so Jay talked about proactive option-based response. Before, we talked about traditional lockdowns. And traditional lockdowns, basically, we said, okay, let's just sit and wait. And now we're saying, you know what, based on the information that we have and the situation at hand, that we actually have options and we can make choices about how we're going to respond and react. Like I mentioned, Alice is an acronym. It's not sequential, and it's based on the situation and that decision that you make at the time, how are you going to respond to that. And this Alice-based approach is research-based. It was actually developed back in 1999 after Columbine. Greg Crane and his wife, Lisa Crane, they work for a police department, and they instituted this Alice approach. And now I want to say, I think the statistics say there are maybe 37 to 38% of the schools in the United States actually use the Alice-based approach. There are other options or companies, I don't want to call it a company, but it really is out there. Alice was the first one, and that's what Chelmsford Public Schools chose to go with. And so, again, I just talked about how Alice is an acronym, and so the A stands for alert. And that's basically your initial awareness of your first notification of a threat. And your first notification of a threat can actually be received through sensory input. And even if you hear now, you become so cognizant and aware of situations that running or loud noises could actually mean that there is an emergency. So being more self-aware and realizing that if you hear a loud noise or if you receive an emergency or a text notification that's alerting you to the initial awareness that something isn't quite right and there might be an active intruder or aggressor in the location that you're at. And we talked a little bit about lockdown. Dr. Lang talked about that traditional lockdown. And so we like to think about this as like lockdown plus. We're not saying that we're not ever going to do a lockdown, because based on the information that you receive, the options that you have, lockdown might be the best or only choice. But what is that lockdown going to look like? And again, just think about the premise of you want to be proactive and you want to have options. So it's no longer sitting and waiting. You want to fortify the location to stop or slow the entry. So in a lockdown situation, if you were going to lock down, perhaps you would barricade the door with some chairs, with some desks. Maybe you would use your belt, and you would actually, depending on which kind of door you had, if it opened out or in, you would secure it with a belt or some sort of way to restrict that. So that's what we're talking about in an enhanced lockdown. And also thinking about, what would you do if an intruder came in, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So that's the enhanced lockdown or a lockdown plus. So it just looks a little bit different based on the information that we're receiving. And so information, inform, this is real-time information, which fortunately we are able to have a little bit more of because of our technology, right? So we we have texts, and we have cell phones now, but the police radios, I know that the school department and the police department just this past year worked closely that we all have access to the police department through our radios, which is great. This can happen on a PA system. But based on this information about where this intruder is, what's happening, when it's happening, and who it is how you are going to respond to that situation. So the more information you have and the most current information you have is how you're going to be proactive, and you're going to have that option. You're going to have the option, do I need to lock down, or do I need to do something else? Am I going to need to evacuate? So countering is basically interference. Now, how can you interfere with this aggressor or intruder? And we don't want to mistake this for fighting, because counter isn't really, it's fighting. It's not fighting. It's taking back control, thinking about what in an age-appropriate way to counter is, right? It might look different in an elementary school than it does at our high school, and that personal choice. So countering or interruption tools. You can make noise, you can move, you can cause distractions for that intruder. Because research will tell you, and I'm sure Chief Spinney can speak to it better than me, that a sitting duck, right, if someone's sitting there stagnant, a shooter is going to have a better chance of success, of entry or to shoot someone than somebody who's moving around or distracting or maybe throwing something or a water bottle or just making kind of chaos. They call it actually disrupting your OODA loop. And so the more disruptive that can be for someone, they're not concentrating on the specific target. And then we talked about evacuate, talked about that just briefly. And evacuate is really kind of like your best option. However, it's based on the information you receive. So for example, if I heard an alert that there was an intruder at Jane Gennaro's desk, okay, I need to make a decision. Am I going to go for that enhanced lockdown? Am I going to try to barricade that door? Or I see an exit sign over there, so am I going to try to get out? Based on the information that I have, am I going to use those windows? So really being aware of your surroundings and your environment is really important as well in making those decisions. And again, you evacuate, you're going to remove as many potential targets, you're moving away from that aggressor, you giving that permission to run, which we ordinarily and traditionally didn't do, right? In a traditional lockdown, it's like, let's turn off the lights, let's sit and let's wait. And now it's giving permission to people to run, to make a decision if that's based on the information they have, if that's the best decision to make. And then evacuation to a rally point or reunification points. I know this summer a lot of the school principals met together. I know with in collaboration with the Chelmsford Police Department, talking about just making sure that those rally points and reunification spots are intact, and we know what they are, so we can communicate them. So that basically is just, I'm giving you a brief synopsis of the acronym of ALICE. And again, if you just walk away with thinking that you have an option, you want to be proactive, and you have options. And I think that that's what the most important takeaway is. And like Dr. Lang mentioned, Chelmsford Public Schools, in collaboration with the Chelmsford Police Department and our Chelmsford Fire Department with Gary Ryan as well, and Chief Spinney, we attended a training, a whole 20 Chelmsford Public Schools administrators back in April. We participated in an ALICE instructor certification training. So we're actually, 20 of us are instructor certified. So that means that we went through a 2-day training, and pretty intense training, I'll have to tell you, including scenarios and drills. And someone came out from the organization. Actually, we hosted in Chelmsford. I think we probably had maybe 60 to 70 participants from all over the state, and actually out of state. I think we had Connecticut, New Hampshire, Maine that came to Chelmsford back in April to participate in this training with us. And 10 members of the Chelmsford Police Department, many who are present today, just to show you that we are in collaboration with one another. They're very supportive of the initiative, and we're working together very closely. Before that, like Dr. Lang had mentioned, just back in October, we have an ALICE Exploration Committee that we've met from October throughout the year this summer, in just strategizing next steps for our implementation here in Chelmsford. And we have some of our members here today, John McIsaac, Jeff Parks, and Diana Fullreader. They're part of the Alice Exploration Committee. Thank you for your support tonight. Just thinking about how this is going to roll out, back in June, all staff members received, or I think it was early July, they received a online training, e-learning training that they're expected to participate in over the summer. And basically what this is, it's more like a blended learning model. So the idea is that they're going to be introduced to the Alice initiative and the Alice approach online, and they're going to take various modules about the Alice protocol. They have to pass a test, 90% or higher, I think, before they can submit their certificate. And then we're going to continue to roll that out with some actual real live drills and scenarios in September. Chief Spinney and his officers and Gary Ryan are actually, since they're certified instructors as well, they're going to be present in all 7 of the buildings. On September 18th, all 7 buildings are going to participate in drills and scenarios in collaboration with the police and fire department. And it's just going to, obviously our staff, PD, needs to continue. We're going to train our students, again, at age appropriately, based on, elementary is going to look a little different than it's going to look at middle and high school, and we'll continue to conduct those safety drills. So we'll be informing parents, and there's also a community outreach that I think we're planning some dates in September just to communicate this to parents and what it might look like for their children, because the information that goes home will be a little bit different than it was in the past of that traditional lockdown. And I think from my experience, there are many families in the community that are already familiar with Alice, and they are advocates of the approach, because like I said, I think it's almost 40% of the school systems across the United States use the Alice or a very similar approach to that as well. So what's really exciting is Tom Peterson, our TV guy, in collaboration with John McIsaac, one of our Alice Exploration Committee members and Dean of Whittier House at the high school, he coordinated an Alice video for us as a district to use for the high school students, and also as like a training and part of our community outreach. It's really great because it has all of our students in it. I'm going to show it in a second, and some of our staff members as well. And so we'll show the video, and then if Chief Spinney, if you want to, if anyone has any questions for the Exploration Committee or anyone from the police department, and maybe if you want to interview your.
Yeah, I just want, before we start the video, we're here tonight to answer any questions. First of all, thanks for having us. We want to answer any questions you have and to show that the police department is fully committed to this rollout. Top priority for us. I just really want to very quickly introduce members of my command staff: Lieutenant Colin Spence, Lieutenant Todd Ahern, Lieutenant Gary Hannigan, and one of my tactical experts, Officer Nick Zeminski, who's going to help facilitate the training. They're all going to help facilitate the training, along with myself. We have made such strides in the last couple of years in this community. Police department. Working with the, yeah, don't pay attention to that guy. But actually, the video is excellent except for that part. Really, the last couple of years, I've been working very closely with Superintendent Lang. We have over 200 cameras allocated to the district. I'm excited to say we have a second resource, a full-time school resource officer starting this fall to supplement the one we already had in place. Officer Dan Sullivan starts his new duties the beginning of the school year, and he will be assigned full-time to the middle schools, McCarthy and Parker. And we could not have done that without, obviously, the district's assistants, Dr. Lang, Principal Jeff Parks assisted in the selection of Officer Sullivan, along with Principal McPhee. Really, collaboration through and through. It's never been better than it has been. The communication and collaboration between the police department and the district has never been at the level it's been now. And I feel very confident that when incidents occur, small and large, Dr. Lang and myself are on the phone with each other. And if it can't be one of us, one of our immediate staff members are. Nothing does not go unchecked. If there's anything we've learned for what's happened across the nation, It's that communication's the key. Open dialogue is the key. And I think we're in a very good place here in Chelmsford with those things being established. And my hope moving forward would be to have another school officer, a school resource officer assigned, so both middle schools can have one each. That would be a goal of mine, and I know it's a goal of Dr. Lang's as well. We're going to work towards that. But again, we're excited about the rollout, and we're going to be hand in hand with the school district every step of the way as we move forward with the training. And if you have any questions after the video, that's why we're here. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, without further ado, here is this video.
Massachusetts. And I'm Jay Lang, Superintendent of Schools in Chelmsford. The Chelmsford Public Schools, along with the Chelmsford Police, are proud to implement the ALICE Safety Program in our buildings.
The ALICE Safety Program emphasizes an option-based approach during active threat events and other man-made incidents. We are always looking for innovative ways to ensure that the children and staff are safe in our school system. The ALICE program takes steps to ensure that this happens.
We have produced a short video to demonstrate some of the protocols that will or have already been instituted. I would like to emphasize that the video is designed to educate, not to frighten viewers. We understand that this is a difficult subject and may be uneasy to talk about, but the more prepared you are for an event of this magnitude, the more likely you will be able to react in a way that will enhance the safety of our school community when it is needed most.
Both the Chelmsford Police and Chelmsford school officials place the utmost importance on the safety of the students, staff, and all of those that enter into our buildings.
The Chelmsford Public Schools take pride in being a safe place to learn and grow. However, the reality is that it is possible for someone to come into one of our buildings with the intention of causing harm or threatening our students, staff, or visitors. The schools have partnered with the Chelmsford Police Department and work hard every day in an effort to promote a safe working and learning environment. Should the unthinkable happen in a Chelmsford school, it is imperative that we know how to react to help lessen the impact and to help protect ourselves and others. Realizing the recent tragedies regarding school shootings, we strive to prepare ourselves and others to react in a way that will help prevent injuries and save lives. Although highly unlikely, you could be faced with a situation in which an armed aggressor is threatening your safety, as well as those around you. Today, we would like to introduce to you a program called ALICE. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. The proper implementation of these 5 steps can help save your life or the lives of others. ALICE seems like a series of steps for you to follow. However, the letters are actually a way for you to remember the important choices you may need to make in order to stay safe. It is also important to know that these are not necessarily sequential steps that need to be followed in a particular order. The decisions you make should be based on your specific situation, should you find yourself in danger. The decisions you make may, and most likely will, be different than decisions being made in another part of the school. You may choose to evacuate, but another group of students may not have that option available to them. They may choose to lock down in the classroom. The important thing is that your only objective is to get out of this situation safely. Let's take a look at the different parts of ALICE. The A stands for Alert. Alert refers to the way you learn about the threatening situation and how you communicate the dangers to others. You may see the aggressor. You may hear gunshots, screams, or other loud noises. Someone may tell you. It may be announced using the school's loudspeaker system, or you may receive a phone call or text. It is always okay to contact the Chelmsford Police or 911 with information, as they are prepared to handle the overflow calls they may receive during an emergency. Once alerted to the danger, it is time to make some quick decisions, and that is where the other 4 key points of ALICE can help. The L refers to lockdown. If you choose to lock down, move quickly to an area or room that can be closed off by a door or another barrier. Quickly lock and barricade the door. This may be as simple as removing a safety device that prevents the door from shutting, such as a magnet. It is important to act quickly. because time is always an issue for you and the aggressor. Even though you may be moving and thinking quickly, it is imperative that you do not panic and continue to think clearly. If you're able to stack chairs, desks, tables, and other things against the doorway, the threatening person will likely move to another area instead of wasting time trying to climb over or move the objects in an attempt to get into a specific room. The aggressor's goal is to do as much harm as possible, as quickly as possible, before the police intervene. Once you have locked and barricaded the door, quickly move to an area out of sight and start formulating a plan on how to respond should the aggressor try to get into your safe area. At this point, you should not open the door for anyone, even if you recognize the voice. You don't know what else could be on the other side of the door. Coordinate your actions. Start gathering several items that you can use to protect yourself. You can use classroom supplies to throw at the aggressor to disorient him or her. A constant barrage of small, hard, heavy objects is key. Communicate the plan with the people around you. Don't wait and hope that they won't enter. Have a plan in place and make sure that everyone in the room knows it. Please know that the police are trained to respond to the threat. The police are not there to care for those injured or to stop and try to get people out of the building. Their mission is just to stop the aggressor from harming others as quickly as possible. The I is for inform. Staying informed is critical in an emergency situation. If you see or hear something that can help the police, someone in your room should immediately call 911 and get the information to the dispatcher. Telling the 911 dispatcher what you have seen or heard and where the aggressor may be located is key to helping the police respond to the threat. Until the police arrive, you are their eyes and ears in the school. Answer any questions that the dispatcher asks you. If you don't know the answer, that is okay. Just being on the line with them is immensely helpful. The C represents counter. If there is no way of keeping the aggressor out of your room or to evacuate to a safer area, you may have to defend yourself. If you decide to counter the aggressor's attack, you may be able to distract or disrupt the aggressor's plan. By taking an offensive stand, you put the aggressor on the defensive and may be even able to disarm or subdue the aggressor until police arrive. Once on the floor, try to separate the weapon from the aggressor, but never pick it up or handle it. You should then have someone dial 911 to update the police of the situation with the aggressor's location. If possible, hold the aggressor's face down on the floor until the police arrive. Once again, do not pick up or handle the weapon, as you may be mistaken as the aggressor. If you are staying in the room, carefully place a trash can or large object over the weapon and guard it until police arrive. The E is for evacuate. If the person on the floor is still a threat, you may choose to evacuate the room and then the building. If you leave with the weapon, place it in a trash can, box, or other container so that you will not be mistaken by the police as the aggressor as you enter into the hall or exit the building. You should place your hands above your head with your fingers spread when exiting the school to show police that you are not the aggressor. You may also choose to evacuate as soon as you are alerted of the threat and can make an informed decision based on the aggressor's position. If the aggressor is on the other side of the school, this may be your best option. Once out of the school, meet at the nearest reunification point and await further instruction. The ALICE program is designed to help teach students and employees of the Chelmsford Public Schools how to react based on any type of threatening situation. Only confront the aggressor if it is obvious that you are in immediate danger and if there is no other way to lock down or evacuate the area.
Thank you for watching this video. In collaboration with the Chelmsford Public Schools, the Chelmsford Police Department will be implementing the school intruder training for staff and students on campus. Please know the Chelmsford Police Department and school officials will always do everything in our power to prevent a situation like the ones you saw from arising. We all strive to make Chelmsford a safe place to work, learn, and live, but these protocols are necessary so that we can quickly and effectively respond to a threatening situation. We encourage you to ask any questions you may have to your school administrators or police. We are always looking for innovative ways to keep our students and faculty safe while in the attendance of our school buildings. This ALICE program takes massive steps in this direction. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just jump in for 1 second. Do you mind, Kelly?
Yeah, great.
Okay. Just to echo a couple of things that the chief had said earlier, I really do think our communication collaboration is excellent. You kind of take it for granted sometimes in a town our size, but you often don't have the kind of information sharing and relationships. This doesn't happen in every community, so I do think that's unique to Chelmsford. Having Becky, the SRO at the high school, and now having Dan be an SRO assigned specifically to the 2 middle schools, I think is a huge step in the right direction, just having some additional resources in the building. And a lot of this, Principal Murray, when he was up speaking, and I think the police would tell you the same thing, a lot of it is really not about the police enforcement, it's about the relationships that get established and the communication that gets opened up between staff and students in the building and the police, if ever something were to go wrong. It's that information sharing, and it really just comes from, seeing the same people day in, day out, and knowing that they can go to a trusted adult if they have an issue. I think Tom and Chelmsford Telemedia did a great job. We needed to have some kind of a video to be able to talk a little bit about how we're going to roll out and what ALICE means, because again, we see it every day and we know what it would mean, but we have to produce some materials to be able to share with our community to know that our response is changing, but also parents, because parents are going to want to know if their children are coming home after doing a drill or a response. They're going to need to know what we're actually talking about. So I think this video is a great step. We'll obviously also be working to do some age-appropriate videos at the elementary and middle school level before we do the rollout later in September. But I think this gives a good flavor for what's happening. What we wanted to do is show it to you tonight and kind of pilot it before we go back to the school year, so that you have a sense of what the staff are actually seeing and dealing with and are going to be participating with on that particular professional development day. I'd mentioned to Dennis last week as well, I am going to invite each of the school committee members to that ALICE to take the training with us, the same training that our staff are seeing. It's only about a 45-minute to an hour-long training. It's totally voluntary, but I think it would give you some indication and understanding of what the staff are actually seeing and training on, in case you bump into them or you have a question, or you just want to be able to share that information to know how our staff will be responding in an emergency type situation. So for the school committee, we're going to send those links out to you as well and invite you to participate that if you'd like to do so. But I very much appreciate Chief Spinney and Kelly and both the police staff and school admin that are here tonight. I know we'll answer questions if anyone has any. This is going to be a big change for us. I think it's very timely and well needed. We've spent a lot of time kind of thinking about how we're going to roll this out. So we're excited about making this change. But I appreciate everyone's assistance on this.
Does ALICE only apply once an assailant or whatever has entered the building? Is there a separate program before someone enters the building? Perhaps there are children on the playground or, outside in a class.
Yeah,
Sometimes
so the alert could happen at any point.
Okay, so it's not just once they've infiltrated, it's prior to as well.
If somebody, it's again, what information do you have? What would be appropriate? So in making those decisions. So again, it's about that alert and that inform. So if there is somebody on the playground that was an active intruder, then you would want to make that decision.
A benefit with the program is the options are really open-ended and anything's in play. It's not defined by do A if you see B, et cetera. It's open-ended. So if an intruder's on the grounds, the best bet could be if kids were outside in the playground to run into the woods. Depending on where the intruder or the threat might be, the safer play might be to run into the building. That's the beauty of the system.
Okay.
It gives everybody choices to make to protect themselves the best way.
Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to that, if there is students on the playground, for example, and there's an intruder in the building, how would the playground people be alerted? Because you would be typically using an intercom, right? But they may not necessarily get that information if they're outside.
Right. Sometimes each of our buildings is a little different communication-wise, but a lot of our buildings do have external speakers.
Okay.
So depending if the building is getting an internal message, the external people may hear that as well. As well as whenever we have, say, kids out at recess, the recess aides or the staff that are out with the children would also have a walkie-talkie.
Okay.
So again, it would be that communication, either, walkie-talkie or if they do have the access to the loudspeaker. But then they're going to be able to
Could be a cell
cell
phone, it
phone,
could be
right.
any way.
But they'll be able to make the decision, outside of whether, if there is an intruder inside the building, you're not going to want to come back in. So, now the adults have some choices to be able to take the kids and come up with different options.
I think one thing I would like us to think about is making sure, maybe that we think about an external speaker on the playground area. And the only reason I say this is because sometimes it's so noisy, it's hard to hear the walkie-talkie, just speaking from experience. Or it just doesn't come across clearly or something, so
Right.
just something to consider, I think.
No, it's a good point, and I do think, to Kelly's point, and I think Chief Spinney might mention this too, it's all forms of communication. So you may have a situation too where you can't get to the speaker to be able to do
Well, that
something.
is
So you're
true.
going to want to
You're
have
absolutely
backups.
right,
You're going to want to
yes.
have the radios. You're going to want to have
Yes.
texting ability to get to staff.
Yeah.
It really is all just situational based on, what type of an intruder you're dealing with and
Right.
when. But no, certainly, and we'll be looking to enhance those things as we go.
I just had a couple of things, the things that I think are known, but maybe just to mention. It occurred to me in the film when the guys are running down the front walk, based on my experience at the high school, about 2 minutes after that, the parents will be coming right behind them. And that's, in your planning, I'm sure it's a big thing, because particularly with the increased communication, we had a situation, and the parents get there almost before we were able to act.
It's a big problem for us now
Yeah.
in today's world of instantaneous information.
Yeah.
So one of the things we're doing with some of our planning, and not to get too into the weeds, is to have designated areas where parents would be told to go.
Good.
Obviously, it's problematic if mom and dad are allowed to enter the building for a variety of reasons that we're all aware of. But it would be chaotic. It would be difficult. But one of the things we're trying to get better and better at, and we're beginning to train this way, is to have pre-designated zones for media, family, other emergency resources. We're talking about these things ahead of time, so if God forbid something was to happen, obviously it would be as smooth as possible. But in today's social media world, yes, it's a problem.
The other thing I was going to, actually, Donna could comment more about this. Even when we have a fire drill, special ed kids often have problems. They go to the bathroom and all this kind of thing. Because this is more than a fire drill, I'll just leave it at that. I think our staff has to expect some of these kids to have problems with it, and just they work with them all the time, and I know that, but most people wouldn't think that it would be the case. Regular kids are going to have enough concern, but special ed kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that you'll be taking a look at.
And
yeah.
Alice actually does address that, so they have a variety of different modules for different scenarios, and so they have actually a module that special educators will be viewing about just that, and how to respond and react for students that, have, a variety of challenges. We even have a separate video for bus drivers. There's so, with the resources, Alice actually has a lot of resources that we'll be using in addition just to the e-learning module based on, specific, for our cafeteria staff. They have a specific module for that, as well as our preschool population.
And I'll just add one other comment based on my experience. If it became necessary to bring in the outside team that we have access to, I know some people probably have concerns about that. All my dealing with them ever was fantastic.
They're professionals through and through. But that would be an after type of action.
It would be
yeah.
beyond this, but I just thought I'd throw that out because, to be honest, I expected it to be like a Marine situation. And we had a scare, and we had to search the kids coming back in after a weekend, and they couldn't have been any better. I mean, I just want to emphasize that. They're fantastic, in addition to our own staff.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I thought the video was great. I mean, it's great for informing parents and staff and older kids. Would you approach it the same way with younger kids? Would you show them that? I mean, how do you approach it
Absolutely
with?
So again, Alice has a variety of resources and videos that are age appropriate for the elementary level. They also have literature that they recommend and books that are Alice endorsed or whatnot, and talking about, we talk about fire, we talk about stranger danger, but how are we going to talk about, an intruder? And so they do have age-appropriate materials and resources, but no, that's not something, this video would not be something that we
Right,
would
be
be
scary for a
showing
little
to
kid, yeah.
the elementary population. I think Jay had alluded to that we'll probably put something together that is more appropriate for that level. And then,
The elementary teachers and assistant principals and assistant principals met just last week, and
Got to come to the speaker.
Hi, I'm Diana Full-Reader, principal at Center. I just wanted to mention that the elementary principals did meet, and assistant principals this past week, and reviewed some of the resources and compiled. We were lucky Mr. Romalo came from a district where they had been doing ALICE. Groton Dunstable has been doing ALICE where I came from, and Mr. Hoyt. So we did have some resources that we were able to pull and kind of replicate from other districts. So we do have some things prepared already. And they're very different.
Yeah, I would assume.
Yes.
Anybody else, John?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. So I hope you guys work really hard to become very proficient in ALICE in the district, and then just hope that we never have to use it. That's really kind of the point there.
Agreed.
Anybody else?
The only thing I wanted to say is as I was watching the video, I found myself kind of getting choked up a little bit. So I am not familiar with ALICE per se, but I use the option-based protocol. And it's, from a teacher's perspective, very stressful. Even the training is very, when we went through our mock drill, where we were practicing the barricading and evacuating and whatnot, it was one of the most sobering experiences I've ever had in my life. And I guess I want to, I think it's important that we recognize parents' concerns and kids' concerns, but I think it's also important that we recognize the stress that teachers are under, and that it's important that we make sure that they have all of the tools that they need to have in order to be able to keep the kids in the classroom that they're in safe. And I feel very confident in our teachers, and I know that they're going to take this very, very seriously, and will do whatever they can to protect the kids in the school district. But, I think that sometimes the stress that is on teachers isn't adequately recognized enough. They're the ones making the decisions with the kids, and it's a really, really tough position to be in. And as a teacher, every time something like this is in the news, I spend the entire next nights thinking about how will I get out of my classroom? How will I protect my kids? So thank you to all of you for putting together this and going through the training, because it's not easy.
Anybody else? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you very much.
presentation.
More to come.
More to come. Yep.
thank you.
Thanks, guys. We're good.
All right, so next up, I had mentioned earlier that one of the things we discussed the last meeting was public input at our meetings. Based on our recently approved new policy, public input at the start of the meetings is to be limited to discussions related to topics on the nightly agenda. The reason behind this is to make sure that people have an opportunity to give input on the topics we're going to be making decisions on that night, while still leaving an appropriate amount of time to conduct other business at the meeting. We also discussed that we don't want to limit people's opportunities to speak to the committee, so what was proposed is having a second opportunity for public comment at the end of our meetings, where people can bring up topics that they would like us to address at a subsequent meeting. Okay, so one of the things about public input is it can't really be a back and forth on issues that aren't on the agenda, but if people want to come at the end of the meeting and they have questions or concerns about something they would like us to bring up later, this would be an opportunity for them to do that. One of the concerns that was brought up was that maybe people don't want to stay to the end of the meetings. But all of us are available. If you have an issue that you would like brought up, you can email any of us, and we will gladly bring them up at the end of the meeting. We also talked about starting some public forums where basically it's not a school committee business meeting. It's just an opportunity for people to come and have discussions on various topics related to schools. We'll probably try to do it topic-related, at least the beginning. So I think tentatively, we talked about maybe doing something in October and maybe doing it on school safety. So we're going to kind of try to finalize what would be a good date for that and a good location for that. And so once we have the details finalized, then we'll let people know as far as that's concerned. Other than that, I mean, the only other thing that we mentioned as far as the agenda was that also to include something about legislative updates at the end. So I don't know if we need to vote on changing the agenda at all, or...
The only thing, we were going to wait because our last meeting wasn't televised, so we
Yeah.
just didn't want to catch someone off guard, so we figured we'd talk about it tonight, and then going forward at the September 4th meeting is when we change the agenda. So under the public comments at the beginning, we'll put some kind of a descriptor that it's about, speaking about agenda items, and then public comments at the end will be just kind of generic public comments, or almost the community's opportunity to ask for us to explore a particular a report or an issue or whatnot. What was the other one you said?
In terms of, I don't know if we had to vote
Legislative
on
action?
changing the agenda at all. I know Donna mentioned maybe adding a line at the end,
Yeah.
but any kind of
I mean, it
we
is
could do it as
one of
part
our
of liaison.
responsibilities, so I think it's worth having on there. It may not be anything, but
Would we do it as a I don't mean to talk.
Yeah.
Would we do it as a separate one, or just under action items, new items, where it says requests for reports and updates? I could just do number 2.
Yep.
And we could just call it like legislative updates there if you want.
Yeah.
If we have something, we bring it up. If we don't, we
Yep.
don't.
Right. And one other thing we mentioned at the beginning, we'll still allow people to make announcements that are related to schools, because
Right.
I know sometimes we have people come and talk about, the reading that people do in the schools, or other events that are going on in the school that's kind of district-wide. So we're still going to allow for that at the beginning. If people want to make announcements, and then you put on the agenda items, and at the end, more of an open opportunity to ask questions or ask us to discuss other things later on in another meeting. So,
You and the superintendent meet to form the agenda. Is there a timeline? Could we set a deadline? If you'd like to have something on the agenda, please contact Chairman before this date, so that it'll be included, so they don't have to come to a meeting just to come to the mic and make that. They can
Well,
do
we-
it by email.
Yeah, we did say, too, that even if someone just emailed it, if they weren't able to come to the meeting, but they wanted their issue raised, we could actually just read the email to have it be part of the record.
Okay.
And then we would address it at the next meeting.
Can we post on the website what the deadlines are? We have to receive an email by this date in order to include it on the agenda. People need to have guidelines.
so like the 48-hour in advance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Something, whatever the timeline is to set the agenda, we need to receive your request by this time, on a Wednesday or whatever.
Can I just jump, we
Yeah,
might be looking at it a
absolutely, yeah.
little differently.
Yeah.
I guess if someone wants to just have their initial request made or whatnot, as long as we really received it right up until the meeting, we could read it that evening and get it into the record. We wouldn't necessarily prepare a report or respond, just from an outside person asking for something before it really came before the school committee. So, I mean, even say, if we wanted to say noon or something like that on the day of the school committee meeting, as long as we had the communication by then, we could read it into the record that evening and then plan for when it might be on an upcoming agenda.
I think you might be talking about two different
think so, too.
things. So there's one part around the open discussion, but then there's the other part about what if someone wants to request an agenda item, like they want something on the agenda. How would they contact you? How much time would you need, before?
And I think the time thing would depend on what it was, too. So some issues require some time to gather information on. So, if you might say, if we say a Wednesday, it might not be enough time for Tuesday to get that information. So I think that's going to vary a little bit, depending on what some you may
Depends
be
on
able
what
to
the
do
ask
right away.
is,
Yeah.
how much work
Right.
is going to have to
Right.
go into
Sure,
it.
but I guess what I would say is to what Barbara's saying is let's say it's, 72 hours in advance, I'm just throwing that out. Okay, and then you look at it and you say, we're going to need a little bit more time, and then we get back to that person and say, okay, it's not going to be on the next meeting, but it will be on in, the following meeting, to give us enough time to be able to collect information.
Yeah, as long as the request is acknowledged.
Right.
And respond.
So generally, we meet Tuesday, Wednesday, the week before. So if I get an email by that point, and I can discuss it with, because I might not know how much work it's going to take, and then I can talk to the superintendent, and then superintendent say, oh, yeah, we can do that for next meeting, or it's going to take me a couple, a little bit longer to get it, then I can respond back and let the person know.
I'm just requesting that that information be supplied on the website. So when someone says, oh, now we have to be on the agenda, how do I do that? So there should be something that residents can go to the website and say, oh, here it is, here's how I get on the agenda.
Right, and
Say the
then,
week
and to
before.
include in that they can email any one of us to request it to be put on the
Right,
agenda as
or
well.
directly
Exactly.
contact.
So we would have to discuss it, yeah.
Right.
So I guess if we say the week before, so the Tuesday before, and then we could discuss whether, A, it's appropriate to put on the agenda, so not everything might be appropriate, and how long it'll take to do that, and I can get it back to the person and give them some feedback in terms of when it might come up on the agenda, or if maybe if it's something that wouldn't be
Just as
something
long
in our
as,
meetings.
as long as the guidelines are,
Yeah. Right.
transparent.
Okay, anything else in relationship to that? So we don't have to vote to change the agenda at all, we just can, the format.
Yeah, I think the format's okay. Why don't we put it together that way for the September 4th meeting? And if you like it, we'll just adopt that going forward.
Sounds good.
Does that work?
Works?
Barbara, do you want that on the school committee page?
Somewhere where it's, easy to define.
Okay.
So they don't have to do a search.
Right. Next up, strategic
Oh,
plan.
thank you. Strategic plan update. So we just finished the first year of our strategic plan. And actually, I'm going to turn it over to Linda. And Linda's going to kind of walk us through just some of the activity that took place over the course of this last year, how we did addressing some of the goals that we set out for ourselves, and just to provide a summary for you on year one, because at our next meeting in September, we'll be talking about how we're going to launch year two. So turn it over to Linda.
So you have a lot of papers in front of you. I was trying to find the easiest format so that you could understand what the actual goal was, what the initiative was, and then the action items that went with each one of those initiatives. So in front of you, you have like the global overview. You've seen this document once before, where it just kind of gives you an idea of what's happening from, 2017 is when this started, all the way to 2020. So in the first year, the 16-17 school year, we took the whole year to actually put the plan together. We worked with a consultant. We worked in different working groups in order to try and figure out the academic piece, what that was going to look like in connection with the social emotional piece. And then obviously there's the financial component, because you can build anything you want, but you have to make sure that you have some type of foundation underneath it in order to support it. So I'm going to give you I'm going to walk you through each page just with a brief summary. I know you can all read, and just give you an idea of what's happening, and then we can open it up for the different discussions if you'd like. So the first objective was an academic goal. And if you remember back in 2011, that's when all the standards changed, so there was a big, heavy push for the ELA and the mathematics, and that's where a lot of the academic goal focus was. So now moving forward, we have the next generation science standards, and with those science standards comes a lot of curriculum and PD around it, especially at the elementary level, where they teach all 4 subjects. So a lot of the things that have been happening is re-looking at the elementary level up to grade 6, we call them pacing guides, so it gives them an idea of what it looks like in each of the months, and then from 6th grade on, typically we try to move over to like syllabi for each of the groups. So I'll be talking about those 2 different terms. So what we did is we took a step back, look at what we're doing, how are we going to incorporate this, what does it look like for the science and the social studies as well in a literacy block, because there's only a certain amount of time during the day that teachers are able to teach, so they have to be able to, fit that in. In fact, today was the last day of professional development for the elementary group getting together and trying to put those guides together, and they'll work with their different grade level team teachers to help incorporate that. So you'll see a lot of that work that's going to be happening, and then in grade 6, they're starting their adoption program, like a pilot program for adoption, and 7 through 12 they're in better shape because the curriculum was already, the science standards were better suited for the secondary level than it was for the K through 6 level. So they're still going to, though, take a look at what they're doing and how that sequencing goes. So that's what's happening with that first part of the first item for the first initiative. If you flip to the next page, There was 7 different action items that were happening. Even after we review all those pacing guides, we have to have a place to actually make the adjustments and places to put them. So, and make sure that our program of studies is in alignment with what's happening. So many of the different things that we did was look at different platforms. Where are we going to put this information? We used to have we still do have the intranet, which is an internal place for us to house things, but with Google, it allowed us to have more team drives, so you could share it specifically with grade levels. It depends on who needed access. So we're shifting everything to our Google platform with the help of the technology department, which has been, great. They're very good and very proficient in that area, so it's been helpful. And then we've always had, so this is nothing new, I think it's just important to keep it on any strategic plan, any type of curriculum adoption cycle. You can't have all the departments vying for the monies at the same time and trying to roll everything out at the same time. So each of the department coordinators and I sit down and we just shift that adoption cycle forward and then back it in for the future years that will be happening. So we've sat down and had a chance to go through those to make sure that every department is being taken care of, not just the math, ELA, science, and social studies. This expands out into even guidance. It will be fine and performing arts. So we have a lot of different curriculum guides adoption guides that help us go through that. And then we've been fortunate enough through our grants, they've stayed pretty steady. We have a writing coach, and then we have 2 other coaches that share between mathematics and science. So those coaches have been very integral in going in and working with the teachers. They're non-evaluative, so the teachers feel very comfortable with them and help them either with lesson planning. They'll do a model lesson for the teachers, so that's been very helpful, and our hopes are that our grants stay pretty sustainable to allow us to continue with our coaches. And I don't know if you want to stop and ask questions or you want to wait till the end. Just feel free to, chime in either way. And then if you go, we're going to be talking about Tier 1 interventions. We're going to be talking about academic Tier 1, and then I'm going to get into the social emotional Tier 1. It gets a little confusing. There's a lot of jargon and a lot of acronyms, so I'll try to, break it down. So since we're still in an academic goal right now, the Tier 1 instructional practices are really, best practices for teaching. And then if a student isn't able to do the work, what are going to be those next steps? So one of the things that we've been able to do is review our DCAP. It's a district accommodation plan. This is for any teacher. You don't have to be a special ed student. An accommodation is much different than a modification. So this is different strategies that you can use in your class if a student isn't able to really access the curriculum. The other piece that goes with that, and this is something that's been in this district, and I can tell you since 2009, because I was one of the first cohorts to go through it, is we have Universal Design for Learning, and it's a nice complement to the DCAP to help teachers have those, different multiple means of representation, engagement, and expression. And if you think of lesson planning, those are the 3 tenets of lesson planning. So teachers have a lot of different access to things in order to be able to, pull for different students and basically differentiate for their students and give as much support. So we've been, again, through the grant, which is helpful, we run a graduate level class through Fitchburg where teachers could earn 3 credits towards their future education, or if their lane changes. And we were able to combine it with the sheltered English immersion requirement for teachers. They have to have 15 PDPs in that. So we took the UDL class and morphed it for teachers to be able to take that actual class online. It's through our Google Classroom, which is, again, another platform. One of our teachers developed the actually, I take it back. Stephanie Quinn and I developed that one, but we also have one for special ed too.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the teachers monitor it, almost like PD, and they're able to do it online, so it's asynchronous for the teachers. So we're, super happy that we're able to keep that initiative since 2009 because it's in the forefront. The other piece was 2 years ago, Kelly Rogers, who you met tonight, Matthew Bayronabon and myself, we started learning walks through the schools. I'll tell you, the first year was pretty, shaky. We didn't really have a good platform for it. So we did a little more research around it, and we ended up finding the Instructional Rounds book, and we've modeled our learning walk teams through that, and now we've brought in other administrators. The goal for this upcoming school year is to start a small committee with teachers and get it kind of to bubble up, ground up kind of work, and then we'll hopefully get more teachers involved in that learning walk
Do you have
process.
a theme each time that you're walking through?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things about learning walks is that you have to have a focus of inquiry.
Right.
And that focus of inquiry could be like an initiative that you're working on, or it could be generated from what you're seeing in the other classrooms. You might find, oh geez, we're realizing kids, there's no exit tickets that are happening. I'm making things up. I'm
No, I know
not
what
saying
you
that
mean.
this is happening, but, so the whole focus of inquiry for all the buildings could be like, what are we actually doing? So that's the nice part about it, is that you're not stuck with one thing, but you should go in there with a focus.
And the goal, improving instructional practice.
Correct, correct. And it could also, you could do these, though, like with the social emotional piece, too. It doesn't have to just always be an academic piece that you're looking at. The academics might be an issue because the classroom isn't set up properly. So we're going to continue with that, and we're going to also, like I said, get, some teachers involved, which will be very good, beyond the district administrators. And then we always have the curriculum writing. I spoke about it just briefly. Every summer, we've been fortunate enough in our operating budget, I get a good chunk of money for PD. So teachers have the opportunity, after the school year's over, sit back, assess what they're doing, and then rewrite some of the curriculum. Or if we have new courses, say at the high school, they have time to build those courses, and we're able to compensate them throughout the summertime. So that's always been a saving grace, I think, rather than, hey, figure it out, and hopefully it comes together when the kids come back in.
So you have, I'm just, I'm very impressed. You have 2 online classes for special education and SEI, for the SEI, for the credits that they have to have for licensure?
PDPs, yep.
Right, okay.
We have 2 of those, and then we have 3 graduate level classes that we run. One of them was the Universal Design for Learning.
Right.
This past year, we added the civics.
Okay.
So again, that's 3 graduate credits with Fitchburg.
Right.
And then the third one is blended learning.
Okay.
So incorporating those pieces, so we're able to offer the 3 graduate level classes. So all the teachers are responsible for is I think it's $315 now to Fitchburg to get the credits. Other than that, it's free. Or
Wow.
they could take it just for PDPs if they
Right,
wanted, if they don't
right.
need the
'Cause
credits.
you need those.
You don't need it, but it helps them kind of leapfrog the course reimbursement process, because you're not always guaranteed course reimbursement. And if that's not the case, you're looking at $1,700, give or take, for a class. So if you wanted to get another class for $315, it works out pretty well.
Oh, that's great.
And it's our instructors. So
That's
we have
fantastic.
people, like the blended learning class, it was 5 different instructors. It was all our TIS instructors here in the district. So they team taught that. And we have administrators, and if teachers are interested in teaching, they certainly can pull together a class.
That's really
when
nice.
funding, so it's
That's very
helpful.
nice.
And it's always based on an initiative.
So what are the 3 classes that we provide?
So the 3 we have
UDL?
is Universal Design for Learning, right? You talk about the college ones, right?
Yes.
Universal Design for Learning, Blended Learning, and Civics.
And they're all graduate level classes?
Through Fitchburg. Fitchburg is our, we have an articulation agreement with them. They approve our syllabi that we send to them. We have a liaison, and when they send it back, we end up running the courses, and the teachers sign up through X2. And I'll put it out, like we put out as a flyer, and let them know. And then what's nice is, if we if we have a couple extra seats, I'll put it out to that larger PD group that I have, and they can come in for free, and our teachers can go to theirs for free. So we're very good about collaborating within the Merrimack Valley to say, hey, I've got some spots open, you want to do it, and I don't have to pay for my teachers to go somewhere else.
And how many openings are there for each of the classes?
We try to cap it at 20, but of course, if there's 21, 22,
Okay.
we've never said no. We have to have at least 10 for it to be viable, but they always fill right up. And then the other thing that I was talking about is the PDPs. That's separate. Those are online modules through Google Classroom
That's
through our
fantastic.
district. And then, because the teachers stress out a little bit about how am I going to get my
15 and 15.
my 15 and 15, and they can do it all in one cycle, which
Right.
is nice.
Yeah, that is nice. That's really nice.
Yeah. Any other questions before I don't want to.
Oh, that's just great.
Take up too much
Thank you.
time for that. And then, obviously, the assessment for student growth. I'll tell you, since I've been a teacher here, we've been talking about universal screening, and we've gone from one to the other, and, how we're going to do it. So what's been nice is, we're, again, working with technology. We were able to identify the universal screener through some of the pilot pieces that we did, and we are going to adopt iReady fully for next year. You're not going to get anything that's perfect, but what's nice about iReady, and we learned from the surveys, is we don't just need just a screener. We need some type of intervention after the fact. So what do you do when they can't get that skill? And that's what the teachers had a lot of concerns about. So we took 35 people total. I think there could have been a few others that jumped in as a pilot group, K to 8, because iReady is a K to 8 program, and went through all the training with them, got the feedback, and we were able to realize that this was probably the best product, because what we decided to do too is do the 3 benchmarking with all students K through 8 to have a large enough N to really say, is this giving us the data that we need? And it helps us correlate it to our internal benchmarks too, like Fontes and Pinnell. We can look at our math benchmarks. So you don't want to have just one piece of data. And then again, obviously you can do that correlation with the standardized state testing. And this came out like on top, and iReady, fortunately for us, is right in Billerica, so I think they're a little bit nicer to us and give us other things. So we're going to roll that out completely for this next school year.
Oh, that's great, because then it also allows you to do some small group or individual work.
And that blended learning piece, so that is part of that coursework of when you're doing station rotations. One of those station rotations could be iReady, because you're not stuck to just doing it only during this time. The kids can keep going.
Exactly.
And one of the other things that I probably should have put in here too is that when iReady ends, we kick into IXL, but we took IXL2 for grades 7 and 8 because we have some kids that are past the iReady support. They've made it, so what's the next step? Let's bootleg them up a little bit before they get to high school, so they move on to IXL. Okay. All right, so this is the second goal, okay? And this is where I'm going to be talking about tiered instruction again, but this is more the social emotional learning piece. And what we did is, and this took a long time. Again, it's an MTSS initiative, multi-tiered system of support. We've been working with consultants over the past several years, and we just can't get our feet under us. And this is happening with a lot of districts. So what we eventually did is we found a good feasible consultant that could help us put together the district level team. And obviously, Dr. Lang and myself are part of that team. And we are able to decide what is this going to look like for our group. And through that consultant, they have helped us get to the point where we have, our district team, there's school teams, so each school has their own team of teachers. And then they provide all the PD, and then for this upcoming year, we're going to be putting in, I changed the name to facilitators because it got a little confusing, I think, for people as we started talking about it, because we were calling them coaches at first, and that gets confusing with our regular coaches. So each one of those teams are going to work together, and then this facilitator will help put all the professional development together for their buildings. Because each of our buildings are at different points. Some are they're ready for Tier 2 interventions, some are still trying to figure out what is Tier 1, what does that look like for their building. So this has been super helpful. We used a lot of the tiered intervention inventories that were provided for us, surveys to help us make these decisions. So it's not just this, thought of we should do this. It actually helped us guide and put everything together. So this has been pretty helpful, and we meet every other month, about maybe every 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
As a group to then guide this process. So this is some of the big things that are happening with us. And in terms of academic data, we collect a lot of that data, and we try to put together, good places for them to be. We're also doing that with the social emotional piece. So one of the things that we've been working on is obviously through X2, which is our student management system, to try and collect data, but a lot of that data is flat for us. So we are trying to move into dashboards, which is going to take us a little bit of time, but both Bill Silver and myself have been working with, we're going to have another consultant too, and hopefully some onboarding with some internal staff to help us develop those dashboards. But one of the other things is 2 of the schools have piloted Swiss. One of our favorite ones. And Swiss has been very good for the elementary level, and what that does is it helps them kind of decide what is it that we need to work on? What's a major incident that's happening that we have to address? So for example, if they found out that there's major incidences every time 3rd grade, I'm not picking on 3rd grade for anybody that's watching, 3rd grade students are out at lunch, and that's when the major incidents are happening, well, guess what? Your intervention would then go out to 3rd grade lunch to make some type of changes for those students so that the incidents don't happen anymore. There was a big push to find out philosophically what is a major incident. to a minor incident. Tolerance level is always in philosophies out there. So the schools worked together, and this is all the way through to find out what is something that is really a major incident that we have to put in a larger intervention rather than something that you could handle in your classroom or maybe with the parents. So they're in very good shape with that at this point. And then moving forward to item number 3, and this is where I changed that. So that I talked a little bit about this too. So we have the different teams that are in there. The biggest thing is the professional development that goes along with that. And when it comes to the professional development, we've been really zeroing in on it's not just SEL time for learning and academic time for learning. They're the same. They're one and the same. If the students if they're not ready for it emotionally, they're not going to access the curriculum. So try not to keep them as two separate things. Similar to regular ed and special education, we work together as a team. So those teams have been working with consultants to help get those PD sessions up, and what is that going to look like for each of the schools. And then we have one more initiative underneath here. So let me see. Oh, I think I've talked a little bit about this too. I think I'm ahead of myself. We ended up using the tiered fidelity inventory system to decide what is the readiness level for each one of these schools. And that even drills down to the different teams of teachers too, because a school might be ready for something, but a team of teachers might need a little bit more support. So this is administered twice a year as well to make sure that if we've implemented something professional development-wise, do we have to go back and then address it again? Because it doesn't stick. You can't just do one and done PD. So I talked a little bit about those major and minor situations. That was that takes a lot of time. You're talking about how people feel towards something. You're getting into philosophy. It's hard to move people forward sometimes with that. So these teams have developed systems to prevent issues, but then they have to have systems to address the response. So what is that intervention going to look like? Who's going to implement the intervention? You can't just kick them to one person and they get magically fixed. So that is a lot of the work that's going to be happening at the schools. They have done and will continue to do. So a lot of these goals are ongoing. And then it has to be evidence-based practices. The interventions have to be something that shows that it works, okay? And it's not necessarily, some type of system you put in place. The best intervention is the teachers and your staff. So what is that going to look like for those teachers, and how do they address that and still teach everybody that's, walking through the door? Okay, so now we're moving into the.
You got one more.
Say again?
You got one more?
I have one more?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, I forgot there was 2 parts of it. The SEL programs. So what we did is we have different programs. There was 3 that were running at the same time. So there was some buildings that were doing second step. We had zones of regulation. We had Mind Up. So groups of people were getting together to say, what is it that we're actually doing? So about 6 years ago, we did have a full implementation of second step, but we've had so much change, and even with staff, that we needed to understand, is this what we're going to go forward with? One of our elementary schools, South Row, did a full implementation of it, and they were very great at piloting and giving us some information. Castle, which is the main source for all social emotional learning, was the research that we reviewed to see what is going to work, how is it going to work, and what's best for each of the levels. K through 8, we are going to go back and implement second step with full fidelity, because it seems to be one of the best programs. It's user-friendly for the teachers. It has different modules for the teachers to learn. And then the high school will look more probably at like more of a Mind-Up program, but they're not there yet to adopt an actual curriculum for SEL learning. So they're going to be the next step for the upcoming school year to decide what kind of a curriculum would they necessarily use on a daily basis, not just at 9 o'clock on Mondays. What is the language that we're going to use when we speak to our students every single day for all of our classes? So that was helpful. Katie Sims and Tom Wright were integral in getting all of that together for us, and we've done a complete inventory of our schools to find out how many additional kits we might need for that, and that was budgeted for the upcoming school year. All right, as our third goal. So this is, like I said, you have to have some type of foundation underneath all of this, because again, we could build anything we want, but you have to be able to afford it. Many of you know, obviously, the story that's gone through. We went through the whole facilities assessment, all of our schools, including central office, and we were trying to identify, what is it, our needs for space. We knew that we had the full-day kindergarten that we wanted to implement, but our elementary schools were busting at the seams. So this was our first year of implementing full-day K, and, I know we keep saying it, and I'm afraid that we're going to jinx ourselves, but, it went off without a hitch. I have not heard major hiccups or anything. The space for those students were fine. The teachers were excited about it. I've only heard great things from the teachers in terms of having that additional time to work on some of these social emotional pieces, give those kids that play time, and just really get to know your kids. Instead of that, they walk through the door, 2.5 hours go by, they get on a bus, and another group come in. So they have, upwards of 25, let's say, students that they get to know very, very well, just like their counterparts 1 through 4. So this was our first year. It went off very well. Obviously, we had applied for our financing for a new school. We know that didn't go through for this year, but those committees are still going to get together because space is an issue, and it's only going to, being able to give those students this, not only the space, but the actual equipment that they need. We've talked about our science labs at our middle schools, so we're going to continue, those committees are going to continue to meet, and we're going to continue to hopefully move forward with some of those applications. And I don't know if you want to chime in with anything else that I might be missing.
No, it's good.
Yeah, and this is the educational piece that I was getting at. So we do want to look at enrollment as well, because the last thing you want to do is find out there's going to be, a huge influx of students. So they came to visit, I think they came to give us a presentation. Was that last spring when they came from NESDEC?
That was last fall.
It was last fall. Okay, so NESDEC has done a complete report on our enrollment based on the birth rates. And what we try to do is shoot for a decent class size. Our class sizes have been pretty consistent recently, so it's been very helpful. Even with the reductions that have been happening at the McCarthy for teams, those class sizes have not shot through the roof. We know where our bubbles are, and we're addressing those bubbles. So, for example, Harrington and Byam have additional classrooms of certain grades, because that's where those bubbles are, and we can shift people as we go along. But we've been pretty steady, and we foresee it to continually be steady in that manageable class size piece.
While you're on class size, I'd like to request some information.
You'd like to request a what?
Some information.
Yes.
I'd like to know the class size of every kindergarten classroom in the district when you get a chance.
For last year?
The upcoming school year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And then this was the funding piece that we were talking about, well, I was talking about earlier, that obviously we want to continue to possibly have a new school building moving forward to shift those academic needs that we'll need to be able to service kids. Students are learning in a different way. It's not, these little boxes that we can put them in. So we want to be able to have those maker spaces. We want to have those places where they can get together and collaborate in an open space, similar to maybe our libraries, the open spaces like that. So we'll continue to do that, but we'll also continue to watch what it looks like for our sizes of our different grade levels, because that's going to make a huge difference either way. And that's, like I said, there's a lot of information. I was trying to find a format, because to give you the larger document with a small status box, it would have been a little messy, and sometimes it can be overwhelming. So I wanted to pull this out specifically to just have a status update alone, without all the other, the other pieces that go with it.
One thing I want to mention, on your page on this public schools website, they have, you have a glossary of terms.
I do.
Okay, and things like that, that if people are confused about, how some of these, what these mean,
Yeah,
or.
SEL,
right,
MTSS,
or
PD.
Right, what UDL is, and all,
Yep.
they go to your page, it really breaks it down very nicely.
On the left-hand, yeah, it will just say acronyms. And
Exactly.
you can click right on it, and A to Z acronyms.
Right, so,
Sometimes I get tripped up with them. I'm like, wait a minute, was that the?
well, and they change quite frequently.
Yes.
So, but it's just worth mentioning that people have,
Yeah.
it's a great page to look at.
I try to keep as much information, like standard space report card has its own page, anything
Right.
like that, because it does get confusing.
I'm sure.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. You beat me to it.
I'm sure the terms are helpful, but this is so different from when, well, we got a lot of grandparents raising kids now. They wouldn't understand one bit of this, and, I mean,
And that's why, like, I try to break it down,
Yeah.
because you can get
I just, you
lost
just,
in it.
I know you know this, but it needs to be, because we get slammed all the time for our language and not understanding things. And, well, I'm a grandfather, not great, but if I were coming in, even if I got the terms, I can't picture how it works. I mean, I can because I've been listening to you.
Right.
But coming in cold, I wouldn't have a clue how this works. And it's so that, again, just when you're talking with people in the community and so forth, if they can get a sense of what happens, I think that's the big thing. All I want to know is, okay, that's good. What happens to my kid? And I think that anything you can do to convey how it works, in addition to just what the structure is, I think would be key. I mean, it's really exciting to me. I can't get over the different parts of instruction now. I mean, the only part of instruction we had was me. No, seriously.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're the tool.
And so this is so different. I don't think, some people who are new to education, I don't think know how much change there's been in the last 15 years. It's mega. I don't want to believe
It's
it at the point.
funny you said that. Don and I were at an event, and somebody came up and says, I don't really watch school committee meetings because there's so many letters, I can't follow what's going on.
Again, it's a whole other language,
Yeah.
they said,
Yeah.
that I just don't understand.
Yeah.
But again, if you get the flow, this is what happens. They get a sense of, these are committees, this is what the teachers do, this is how it impacts on the kids. Anything like that, they'll get. But it's not that easy. But anyway, you're doing a great
Yeah,
job.
a lot of
I
this
don't-
is internal stuff for
Yeah.
us to make sure that we're on track.
Yeah.
It can get difficult. I think that, the major concept is understand is that there's always going to be some type of academic goal, some type of emotional goal, and then a way to have some type of foundation underneath it.
Yeah.
So that when kids aren't able to learn, what are we going to do? And when they can learn, what are we going to do? How do you bootleg them up? So it's not just when students can't learn, it's when they can and then some. What's going to be the steps for those kids? So we try to use as many tools as possible, like a blended learning, to be able to address that, so it's no longer you just have to sit here and listen to this lesson, whether you get it or not.
I think people are getting the social emotional. But when I was in grad school, we talked about, there were people who said, look, there's so much for the kids to learn, we can't be bothered with all of that stuff. That's the function of the churches and the home and all this.
Yeah.
And so talk about a change. It's half of what we do, if not more than that. But there are still elements of that. And I think, we're in a big, again, it's a huge transition from it doesn't belong in the schools. And really, that's what a lot of the discussion was in grad school. It doesn't belong here. You're wasting your time. We got too much to teach. And now it's huge. I don't want to belabor the point, but we're in such transition. It's mind-blowing for a lot of people. Thank you.
Great job on this. So this is a 3-year plan. Will the initiatives change in year 2, 3, or are we just going to build upon what?
You'll build upon them, so you'll have the major goal, you'll have the initiative, but that's why I gave you the overview document, so they talk about those,
Yeah.
but then the steps are what going to change. So some of the steps will go away, because we've completed it, it is what it is. Like you say, okay, we need a place to house things, we found the place, everything's housed there, it's over. And then some of the other ones have the extension, so you want to kind of be weaning it down to, basically nothing, but then you build on it again.
Presenting that at the next 2 meetings.
Okay, yeah.
So will be September. This is kind of a report on the last year, and then it'll be launching year 2 when we meet over the 2 next meetings in September.
Yeah, so the goals and the initiatives stay,
Yeah.
is the steps that will
Yeah.
change. And then we'll have to think, moving forward, when we get into year 3, then so that you're not taking a whole year and stopping.
Right.
To think, what are we gonna do next?
Build on, yeah.
So now we've got some momentum.
Yep. Right. Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so next item on the agenda is the superintendent's evaluation. So one of the principal responsibilities of a school committee member is to evaluate the superintendent. So at our last meeting on the 7th, we set up a timeline for completing his superintendent's evaluation form. So evaluation is an ongoing process, as we work with the superintendent during the course of the year, get information from him, see how he works with his staff, see all the different initiatives he accomplished. We develop our criteria for evaluating him for the year. So in front of you is the summative evaluation. As you can see, 4 out of 5 members did complete the evaluation, so I just want to kind of go over a quick summary of the results. So in standard number 1, instructional leadership, the overall ranking of the superintendent was proficient. In standard number 2, management and operations, the overall ranking was exemplary. In standard 3, family and community engagement, the overall ranking was proficient. In standard 4, professional culture, it was a combination of proficient, exemplary is 2 and 2 in terms of the committee members. So for this year, the overall summative performance rating for the superintendent was proficient. There's some narratives that go along with it. I don't want to read the whole thing, but I want to highlight a few of the things that people wrote in their evaluations. So among the many accomplishments noted in the committee member evaluations was successful implementation of full-day kindergarten, addition of new modular classrooms at all 4 elementary schools, successful negotiation of contracts with multiple employee groups, research and creation of a therapeutic classroom program at the elementary level, and the creation or reestablishment of additional support positions in the district, including assistant principals at the elementary level and a district-wide English coordinator. Superintendent Lang continues to excel at developing and maintaining a budget that meets the needs of the district while living within the financial constraints present at both the local and state level. His skills in this area are evidenced by the overwhelming support for the school-dependent budget at town meeting, a clean financial audit for the 2nd consecutive year, and a replenishment of several reserve funds to assist with future needs and expenses. Despite some difficult situations that arose during the year, the majority of the committee feels the superintendent demonstrated the in-depth knowledge, leadership, professionalism, and composure needed to manage the school district. The superintendent did a good job serving as the voice of Chelmsford Public Schools in the media and during meetings and presentations. The school committee encourages the superintendent to continue to keep parents, staff, and community members informed about the progress and achievements in our schools, as well as the many issues that may arise by means of a wide-reaching, proactive, and timely communication strategy. So,
I'd like to read a statement, please, to explain why I did not respond to the superintendent's evaluation. I'm going to read a letter that I wrote to our chairman today. Den, I think your rigid timeline is arbitrary. Administrators are given an entire year to evaluate teachers, yet the school committee is limited to 2 weeks without any evidence to evaluate the highest paid employee in the district. Who determined this timeline? I adamantly oppose this rush to complete the evaluation. I'm unwilling to accept the anecdotal memo supplied with the evaluation as evidence. Our former superintendent supplied an entire tabbed binder filled with evidence. This is unacceptable and is in itself unsatisfactory. Because I am unwilling to make an evaluation without evidence, which should have been included at the start of the process, as is with our teachers, you have determined that you are disregarding my request. I question whether you have that authority. Regardless, I'm baffled why evidence was not included with the evaluation. All teachers are required to supply evidence to support their evaluations. Why does our superintendent fail to supply evidence? How were other members of the school committee able to evaluate the superintendent without evidence? Did I miss a presentation of evidence? I have reviewed the minutes and did not see evidence to support the evaluation. Perhaps an informal request was made. Further, I do not appreciate your reprimand. I believe there is an evaluation committee. Why did the committee not request evidence? If they did, why was it not supplied to the entire school committee? Has the evaluation committee even met? If so, please provide me with the dates, times, and names of the attendees. As I have stated before, evaluations are not required, and if a school committee member needs additional time because there is no supporting evidence, it should be granted. I am curious why you are insisting on adhering to a hard deadline. Is there a filing deadline with DESE that I am unaware of? Are you suggesting that I should have supplied a rating without any supporting evidence? Please let me know if that is your expectation. I shall wait for your response. I'll supply you a hard copy of that.
I'll respond since it was addressed to me. As I said at the beginning, evaluation of superintendent is an ongoing process. We work with the superintendent during the course of the entire year. I've evaluated teachers for 20 years now. I don't evaluate them in one observation. I evaluate them over the course of the year, make my evaluation of what I see and how they perform. That's how we evaluate superintendent. Number 2, we established a timeline last meeting on the 7th. You weren't here, so I sent you an email the next day to outline that. You were sent an email the next day, or the same day, by the superintendent's office with the form and the timeline and the overview of the district for the year. On Sunday, I will send a reminder email, okay, to every member of the committee to have it on by Wednesday. And I said, if you need extra time, let me know. On Wednesday morning, the day it was due, you said, I need extra time. I said, sure, have till Friday. You didn't email me back, okay? You didn't respond back to me. So basically, you blew me off, okay? Then Saturday morning, you email me again, say, I'll finish it this weekend. Then Sunday night at 10:20, you email me and say, oh, I needed more information, okay? You had a week and a half to get the information you need. You had a week and a half to email me. And the whole year before that, and the whole year before that. Just like everybody else had a whole year before that to gather information. You are making up excuses why you didn't complete your evaluation for the second consecutive year.
I'm not making up excuses.
You are making
My
excuses.
expectation is the same as it's been since I've been on this school committee. The person, the superintendent, supplies an evidence binder. We don't get
Work with
that.
him for the entire year. You're not paying attention then. Okay, so for the entire year,
Yeah,
you're not
that's
paying
it.
attention to what's
That's
going
it. I'm
on.
not
So
paying
you need,
attention.
at the end, you need a binder full of information so you can catch up.
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
excuse me, I'm sorry. To address your evidence concerns, so as a teacher, I do have to submit
You supply
evidence.
evidence.
Absolutely. But, I mean, it is subjective, I get to choose what it is.
Right.
And so the form that you handed out about kind of the year in review is what I used as your evidence, and then I went back and dug into those things a little bit more. I felt that I could only offer a proficient rating since I only came on in April, although I followed things, obviously, carefully over many years. You know, with all due respect to you, I've only been here since April. I also believe that it is our responsibility. I know as a teacher, I collect evidence all year long. And I know that with regards to evidence for Dr. Lang, one of the things that I jotted down when Chief Spinney was commenting, and I put the date here, communication has never been better, because I'm writing things down now for my evaluation that I'm going to do in a year's time.
Okay, so when you got to the part of the rating where it asked about the superintendent's conversations with parents about issues, how did you rate that? How were you able to rate that? Because
Well-
we have had parents here saying, I don't get emails back.
Yes, we have. And then I've also had parents who have contacted me and said that he's been incredibly responsive.
Didn't supply that evidence to you.
Well, and I understand that, and that's what I feel like our responsibility is to kind of seek out that information and to weigh it all, both, the positive and the constructive. So let me give you an example, okay, another example. We had a parent who had a concern about a bus stop, okay? Well, Dr. Lang went out to the house this morning to evaluate the situation, okay? Then he still wasn't sure. He knows I live in the area, so he sent me out to evaluate the situation and speak with the family. To me, that's really good communication.
It's great, and I would like to have seen that in an evidence binder.
And I understand that, but I guess what I'm saying is that part of it is incumbent upon us to also seek the information, okay, and to, to decide, where this fits into the overall picture of our evaluation. That's all I'm saying. And I say, as a teacher who's, evaluated over the course of a year, I'm hoping, I am collecting evidence. I'm going to go in and I'm going to write my goals, and I think that this is part of the timeline for the evaluation. My evaluation was completed at the end of last year. My new evaluation cycle will begin on day one, where I'll establish my goals, and then we'll go through the end of the year. And I have to present evidence as to how well I met those objectives. And then, based on that and observation, this is how I'm evaluated.
Simply all I'm requesting.
So I think
Same
that,
thing
well,
from
I
our
would also say,
superintendent that our teachers are required to do.
but he did through the year, end of the year summary. But I will also say this too, is that there's a body of evidence, throughout the course of these meetings, and other meetings with, town officials, town meeting, tri-board, things like that we can use as a means of evaluating his performance. And, and I've done that. I called, town hall and said, so, how do you feel like things are working? In particular, I spoke with someone in the accounting department. How do you think things are working? And I got some information about that. And I talked to other people, how is the communication? What do you think? What are some of the pluses? What are some of the minuses? And this is how I came up with, in a very short amount of time, excuse me, I've been doing this for quite some time since I came on the board, but what I'm saying is that I've only been here a short amount of time. And I take this and I use it to be able to determine, how it is that I'm going to give a rating.
I think it's admirable that you're able to put that much time into this. I think it would be more efficient if we could expect an evidence binder like everyone else. That's
Well,
it. That's
hang
all
on,
I'm
so,
saying.
I just want to, let me clarify one thing for you, okay? I don't know who does an evidence binder, because in Teach
Well, the
Point,
Teach Point, they upload it.
1 or 2 artifacts for the entire year
Mm-hmm.
on the standard. So it's literally, if I'm talking about family communication, I'm uploading 1 email, not 100 emails, just 1 piece of evidence.
I did not get that.
Well, and
Donna,
again.
I'm not trying to argue.
No, I
My
understand.
expectation is different.
Well, I
I'm
think-
used to getting an evidence binder.
Sure.
I didn't get it last year, I didn't get it this year.
Right.
I don't
Early
understand.
of the year?
We've always gotten it.
Did you ask this
since I've
superintendent
been
for an evidence binder?
Why wouldn't he supply that?
I'm going to be honest with you. I
Was the
felt that it was.
issue raised last year?
I felt that it was incumbent upon me to seek the information based on the year in review. I felt like that was my job, okay? And, again, to be taking, notes throughout the course of the year about things that are said and things that I think that went well and things that I didn't think went, and to be able to incorporate that into evaluation. I understand what you're saying, and I think that may be something that we want to take a look at. It's not something that I'm familiar with in education. I mean, the evidence binder as you're presenting for, your graduate degree or something like that, but on a yearly evaluation, that's not something I'm familiar with,
Well-
but it may not be a bad idea.
Right, we were
but-
presented with a 4-inch binder that was fully tabbed. I don't expect that.
Okay,
But I do expect evidence for me to give a rating.
okay.
That's all I'm saying, Donna. I'm
No, I
not trying
understand.
to be argumentative here.
No.
I don't understand why there was a drop-dead date on this. It could be flexible. It's unacceptable.
Well, and, I think you have an interesting perspective, okay? And I'm not trying to argue with you. All I think I'm trying to say is this is what it looks like from my perspective. This is the way that I went, because I don't want people to think, okay, that, because I didn't feel the same way that you did. And you and I disagree and agree on a lot of things, but I do want people to have a very balanced picture of the process. You didn't feel that there was enough. I felt that there was a sufficient amount of information. Yes, I felt that it was incumbent upon me to search out that information, and I did it through, like I said, a variety of documents, the budget, the town meeting report, all of these things that I have that are accessible to me. I understand what you're saying. It would be more efficient maybe if it was all in one place and that we can take a look at, going forward, but I didn't feel that it should get in the way of me doing my evaluation. That's all.
Could you have responded in terms of your experience and then express the concern that you have now?
Some of them, I don't have any of it. I have no way of knowing how he engaged with parents unless they came in front of us and complained.
Well, why weren't you able to do the evaluation last year, and why weren't you able to do the evaluation of our own committee?
Because we don't have evidence out.
Well, you've been to the committee, you are
I
the
have,
committee.
But that's not evidence.
Oh, God, excuse me.
Well, and Barbara, so then maybe going forward, that one of the things that we have to do in the evaluation process is to define what evidence is,
Right.
right? Okay?
So when you're going around talking to people
Right.
about their interactions,
Right.
that's considered hearsay. They're not here to defend that. I'm looking for evidence. That's all.
Yeah,
That's it.
and so I would say then I think that going forward, that one of the, if this is what you're looking for, and I think, it's a valid point. How do we define evidence? Okay? How do we define evidence? And again, going back to, for example, Teach Point, when I'm submitting my evidence, it's completely subjective.
Right.
Because you know what, I'm not going to give you the email, okay, in which someone said, you didn't get back to me. I am going to give you the email that said, what a great response they got from me, okay?
But your principal's not going to go around your building and say, what's Donna doing?
Well, no, but she is going to come into my classroom and she's going to observe how it is that I'm doing, and I
I'm
think.
rating on communications with parents.
Right, well, and I understand that, okay, and you're right, part of it is hearsay, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. I guess I would call it collecting evidence, And certainly, you're right, we have people that come up here and, you know, I would say that that's evidence, right? And then if another person doesn't choose to come up here and they choose to have a private conversation with me, I think that's evidence too.
I served many years on the evaluation committee with Mike Rigney. We met with the superintendent, we made sure he collected the evidence, that there was evidence for us to view.
You know, I'll be honest with you, again, okay, I didn't know that, all right? And I wish maybe you had said something, you know, maybe back over this, at the beginning of the summer, knowing that we were going to have to do this, like, how are we going to proceed with this evaluation? How are we going to define evidence? Will there be an evaluation committee?
I guess my assumption was the evaluation committee was going to do this, like Mike and I did.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you would know this because you were there. Mike isn't here.
Right.
So, you know.
Not on the committee either.
I know, but I think that you need.
Let's move on.
Well, I'd like to make a statement,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
I'm sorry.
Just
Am I arguing? I apologize.
No, you're not arguing, just because I would be bothered if I didn't say something. I have provided the same evidence to you for the last 3 years that I've been here. I provide an annual review of our work, some of the highlights of the district. I think you see me in action, you know, every day. You see me in meetings and things like that. You know how I interact with people, and you know our work product based on the agendas that we put out, excuse me, and the reports that we produce. So I have basically provided, again, that same information every year. The first year you were provided with it, you found it satisfactory, and you gave me an evaluation based.
My expectation
Can I just
was
finish,
not
please?
as high.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. So you were provided, you were able to provide an evaluation. Last year, you were provided the same documentation. You did not say anything, and a year has gone by, and I still don't have your evaluation from last year. So if you were looking for something for the past year, I've had no way of knowing that. The same year, same thing happens. I provided the same information that seems to be acceptable to everyone else, but now, the night of the evaluation, I'm hearing that you would have liked additional information. One of the things that I always do with people that I work with and I evaluate, and I think one of the biggest pieces of evaluation is not an I gotcha type thing. You need to have communication between the person you're evaluating and the evaluee and whatnot, and be very clear about what the expectations are from the outset. If you had different expectations, I wish you would have talked to me. I wish you would have communicated to me what those expectations were. For the last year, you could have told me that, and perhaps you might have been provided with information in a different format. You never asked that. You didn't ask that a year ago. You didn't ask that this time. Again, what I just can't figure out is how you could have done my evaluation the first year with the same information, same format you received, but you weren't able to do that for the second two. Again, I don't want to belabor this. It just would have bothered me to not say that. You know, I very much, again, when I look at the totality of the evaluation, and I don't know if any other people want to speak, but I very much appreciate the feedback. I appreciate your comments and your concerns. I think we've accomplished a tremendous amount in the last couple of years. I very much enjoy working here, and obviously will continue working here in the years to come, because we have a lot of work to continue to do. But I think one of the things that's going to be critical for us, you know, as an administration, also the school committee, is that people have concerns or questions, you need to bring them up, and you need to talk about them so that we can act on them and try to have some kind of a avenue to move forward. So that's all I would like to say. Again, I don't know if anyone else wants to give input, but I very much appreciate the feedback from the 4 members that were able to provide that. I take that and use that in the work each day.
I just wanted to give just input, so kind of aside from that conversation. So my evaluation process is specific to me, nothing to do with that, right? So when I looked at the year, there are some things that are, for me, they're pretty solid and concrete. Things like budget numbers, right? So are we in the black, things like that. And in terms of things like family communication, there were parents that did come up here that were upset about things, but I also heard a lot of direct feedback from people that I spoke to at town meeting, or parents directly through social media or whatever. They were both positive, negative, whatever. So in that case, you got a proficient. And I think I've told you that directly, that one of the things you could always be better at is how you speak to the community. I do feel like there was enough information just based on the fact that we bear witness on a day-to-day and a week-to-week as we participate in subcommittees and we talk to Dr. Lang. I've done drop-ins here and gone to his office and had discussions about issues that were important to me and with the chairman. So I did end up giving you an exemplary was my rating, but it wasn't across the board, right? It wasn't like the 4 E's. There's definitely room for improvement, and I've given that feedback as well. As an elected official, this is one of our most critical duties outside of really budget and setting policy. So that's just my take on it, so thank you.
Just so you know, I did reach out to MASC, and I asked them, what do I do in the situation? And the email I got back, it says, it is perfectly acceptable for you to exclude the incomplete evaluation or not include it in those areas that were completed, or to include it only in those areas completed, and so to note on the composite evaluation document. Given the way the evaluation process works, I would agree that more information probably isn't the problem. All right, as with other issues, we always try to reach a consensus, but comes a point where a decision has to be made and we need to move on. This is from Mike Gilbert, Field Director from MASC, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, who are the association we look to for our guidelines. So I did reach out. He agreed with my opinion that we needed to move on. We had a deadline. I emailed you multiple times asking you when you were going to complete your evaluation. So it was not a rash decision. Anybody else?
No,
I'll
I
give you a
just
copy
want
of
to,
that.
I just want to, say that, maybe there's something we can take from this, okay, in terms of, I don't think that we should, we're looking now, right? We're beginning our new evaluation cycle next meeting, or now. And, if these are some of the things that you want, maybe you could outline them, specifically around.
Look for one of the binders that we were given in the past.
What is, to define.
I'm not the
them.
first school committee member who has not done an evaluation. We had a member who never did them, refused to do them.
So, I'm just saying that, maybe this is a good time, rather than waiting till,
That it is one of our primary responsibilities.
to try and put that together, so that we have it going forward throughout the year.
I just like that. I think it would be helpful, I'll just speak for myself. I know that you have concerns about the way the committee has acted and some of the decisions that we've made. And I know you have concerns, although I don't know exactly what they are, about the functioning of the administration. But I have no idea what they are. And here's two opportunities, both with the school committee evaluation, with the superintendent evaluation, when you could have said, maybe not in the way that we approached it by focusing on the positive, but I have concern about communication with parents, and that's why I've marked down lower. And you don't need to get it from anywhere other than your own situation. But I honestly feel, there's been tension between you and me and other people here. But part of my frustration, and I'll just leave it at that level, is I don't know where you're coming from on a lot of things. I don't know if you have concerns about the superintendent, I don't know what they are. And if you have concerns about the operation of the committee, I don't know what they are. And I think these were opportunities. That's the way I view the thing, is that coming out of it, to be honest, this evaluation's great for Jay. We don't learn much from it.
Right.
Well, because you didn't give us a dimension that you had that would have been different from Donna's and John and
Well, I
mine.
supplied answers and comments on every one of the comments.
I'm sorry?
I supplied comments on everything. They weren't printed. I was asking for evidence.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
You marked off like 4 areas, put an X on 4 areas, and then.
Because there was no evidence.
This is a summative evaluation. Your individual evaluation will be somewhere, I'm sure.
No, but you have evidence. You probably have better connection with elements in the community than anyone here. Your social life and mine, for example, are totally different. The people I talk to, people you talk to are different. That's evidence. And so you can say, based on my experience, and our experiences are all different. My experience sitting here is different than what you get out of it.
My definition of evidence is different. So
Well,
we can just move on. I
Okay.
appreciate it, because we're not
But
going to get anywhere
No,
there.
but I just really think if you could somehow find a way, and I'm trying not to be adversarial, I try not to be that way all the time. I mean, I come across that way. But anything you could do so that if you have thoughts about, other than the folder, the way that the committee can function more effectively in the way that you view it, or the superintendent can function more effectively in the way that you view it, would be really helpful. Otherwise, you sit there frustrated and we don't know what your positions are. Amen.
Any other comments?
No.
So I'll entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's evaluation.
Yeah, just give me a minute to find it. I make a motion to accept the 2017-2018 school year end-of-cycle summative evaluation report for Superintendent Lang as presented.
Any seconds?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
4-1.
I make a motion to award a performance bonus in the amount of $5,000 to Superintendent Lang in accordance with the superintendent's contract of employment based on the superintendent's overall performance evaluation results of proficient for the 2017-2018 school year. And then a roll call vote's needed for this.
Any seconds? Second. John, seconds. Okay. Al?
Aye.
Barbara?
Nay.
Donna?
Aye.
Aye.
John? Aye. Aye. 4-1. Thank you all for completing this process.
Thank you. Moving back to the agenda, item number 5, the McCarthy Parker student activity fee structure. Donna had originally asked for this report, and I had a conversation with her yesterday because I'm still pulling some information from the 3 schools. So I asked if we'd be all right if we put this off to the next meeting to be able to resolve, and it was acceptable to Donna. So I'd rather just provide one comprehensive report and not piecemeal it. So we're going to put that particular item off. So there's no action on behalf of the committee this evening.
Is that for the,
Item number 6 was a request to take a look at the facility naming policies and procedures that we've had. We've had a request that came in over the course of the past year for a particular facility to be named after someone. And Al was the chair at the time, so I had some discussions with him. Honestly, I wasn't 100% sure how to handle that and what the history in Chelmsford had been. When we did a little bit of legwork to just try to bring it to everyone's attention and then agree with some kind of a process going forward for these, we actually did have a school committee policy that pertains to building naming. Under the old set of numbering, it was policy 1303, and I attached a copy of that behind the cover memo. And this was a section that had already been reviewed by the MASC policy review. And in that particular policy, it's now FF. Interestingly enough, when we had done the policy review with MASC, we had opted to continue and keep the Chelmsford policy and not go with the MASC recommendation. So the only thing that really changed in the policy is just the numbering convention. It's now, instead of going to be 1303, it's going to be FF. But I did include a copy for you of that policy as well. So I think the policy, from looking at this, actually does lay out the criteria under which a facility would be named after someone. I know from time to time these can also be touchy things, and you don't want to make up the rules or change them as you go. So my recommendation to you is that we actually do have a policy in place, and interestingly enough, again, it's not going to change as a result of the MASC policy review, with the exception of the file name. So I would recommend that we actually just go by that particular policy. The only thing that I did to try to streamline this a bit and maybe make it a bit easier for people if they wanted to submit a request, I just put a very basic application sheet together that ultimately, if you approve of us doing this, we could post to the district website. And then we could also, in the event we ever got a request for building naming rights in our office, we could mail a letter or send an email to the person who made the request and provide them with a copy of the application and the policy. And then me or my office would kind of work through having them pull together the necessary biography and paperwork about the request that they're submitting, and then bring that forward to the school committee or a subcommittee of the school committee for review and action. I don't think it's going to be something that happens often. Again, over the last 3 years, we've only had one of these requests. But I don't know if this is helpful to you or not, but I think to go and change the process of the policy now, where we actually already have one, and it's not something that happens often, could actually be more burdensome than just keeping the policy as is. But that the application might be helpful to just streamline the streamline the processing of the request.
Al, you want to, because it started with you, do you want to just go through the difficulty, I guess, in verifying?
No, I just, we received a letter for a specific facility, and I just don't care how we do it. I just wanted to bring it forward.
Right.
One thing that occurred to me, though, I don't know if we have a list of named facilities, but it would be a good thing, because some buildings are obvious, or fields are obvious, but then there are other parts of buildings and so forth that are named, and it would be awkward if we named something for someone who already had it named. So maybe the building, well, we have a lot of new people, so we might have to, but I would recommend, informally that we do that so that we don't create that awkward situation.
Yeah, I would also like language in the policy that once a building's been named after someone, that's not taken, that history remains in perpetuity, unless, of course, we find out that,
They
something.
own slaves.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I want the Carl Rondina
Yeah.
Pack to always be the Carl Rondina Pack, and I don't want that to be bought by someone. And I'd like to include that in the policy, that the
That's in a
naming.
different policy.
Yeah,
Is-
if that's on-
There's a different policy somewhere.
But it would actually, the school committee would have to vote to, let's say it was the PAC type thing, if you wanted to bring a different name in, you would actually have to vote to do that. I don't think anyone's going to go rename a building for
Naming of
someone who was
buildings
named
and
after.
grounds.
But 20 years from now,
But the school committee at that time, if they wanted to, all they would have to do is vote to change the
Yeah.
policy and change the name.
yeah.
An action that you can't prevent an action from a future committee.
Oh, well.
And my only concern when Al presented me is that you got a very nice letter asking to have a certain area named. There's one individual that sent the letter.
Yeah.
I would
I
hope
only
that you could
remember
have like
that.
maybe some supporting signatures to go along with it. 10 people, 15 people that were involved with that particular activity. That knew, I could say, I want the wrestling room named after my father because he was a great, But there's no support for that action. So I would like to see along with that maybe, get some supporting signatures to go along with that. Just so you know that there are multiple people that believe that, this person is
Well, in this
worthy of that
case,
honor.
if that's what you want to do, I would suggest that we get back to this person and say,
Right.
if you could get a few more people,
Right.
whatever,
Yeah.
just so she has
Yeah.
some direction.
Right,
That's
because I didn't know the person, you didn't know the person either, I don't believe.
No, not personally. I just know that he did use that area and brought in people
Right.
from all over the place,
Yeah.
adults,
Right.
to allow them to compete
Yeah.
and so forth. So,
Right.
anyway.
So maybe not just signatures, maybe you want like a letter of reference or a letter of
Maybe, yeah,
character.
maybe 3 other
Because, I mean,
yeah.
somebody could go get
Yeah.
20 signatures and
Yeah, right, so 3 letters of reference, yeah, like you would have. for
I guess the way I would approach it, and like even using this example, if that letter came in and we adopt this, I would then communicate to the family to please fill out this application. They've got to answer these questions about why they think this is a good name and whatnot. I would then take that information and go first to the school and talk to the principal to make sure it's not named after someone else. Or if this was a club or a sport or whatnot, talk to that particular sport and see what the history is behind that particular, just to verify all the different facts. I don't know, I'm not opposed to multiple signatures, but I don't know like what the cutoff would be, or, what's to stop, we have 6 people in the same family, so you get 6 people signing it, it's important to us 6 people, but it might not be like worthy of a community donation. So, and I don't want to have it just be, you got to get the 6 signatures to get in. That might set up a weird dynamic then for us, where we have to approve it or not. But I think by at least having there be an application and a process, I can do the legwork behind the scenes, talk to the principal, talk to the coaches, and then almost bring you back a recommendation, or if I have any questions or need things clarified, I then have a contact to go back and forth with the family and can do some of that legwork for you. But I think that would make it more timely too in the response, so that people aren't hanging out there waiting for, to see if they're going to be approved or
I think
not.
this is an important discussion, not because of this case.
No, in general,
But,
just to
yeah,
have.
because of other situations that would be much more significant, more major facility and so forth. I mean, no one's going to have too much problem with this, probably one way or the other. I'm glad that, this has been addressed, because at some point we'll be naming something bigger and to
Right.
be more important.
Al Thomas something or other.
Yeah.
So we don't take a.
Well, if you like it, we could vote to kind of we've already voted the policies, so you don't really have to vote anything on that. But just, I guess you don't have to even formally vote, but you could just tell me, yes, I like this application process. And then I'll work to put this up online, and we'll start to utilize this.
Yep.
Everybody comfortable?
Yeah.
Bob?
Yeah.
Al? John?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
Be good.
All right. Next item on the agenda was just some updates for you. We had talked about this. There were just a bunch of different requests that had come in over the last number of weeks in this school year coming quickly, so we just wanted to provide some quick updates for you. First one just relates to student transportation of bus passes. Joanna and Peter in her office have been working all through the spring and summer to register students. This is the first time that students, whether they have to pay the fee or it's free, we've asked to go online and actually register for the bus, which will then help us make our routes a little bit more efficient and also provide for easier communication with the actual riders. So as of the printing of this memo, there were about 2,700 families that had gone online to register their students. As of, what was the date? There was a day last week, I don't have my glasses. August 16th. Bus passes were mailed. The first wave of bus passes went out. And then people, believe it or not, people are still registering for the bus every day. So additional passes are just going out in smaller batches right up through the start of the school year. So we actually look like we're in very good shape for the year. I don't know if Joanna has anything to add, but our buses are, we've got plenty of capacity. We don't have any overcrowding issues. It has been significant bringing the routing and the software in-house so that we actually are generating the routes ourselves. We're controlling the students that are assigned to the routes as opposed to waiting on the bus company to do that for us. And I think once we get this full year in swing also, we'll be able to take a look much better at route efficiency and be able to streamline things going forward. So all in all, it's been actually and you don't want to say too much to jinx yourself, but it's been a pretty good rollout. And the few questions or concerns that have come up, we've just been addressing them in one-off situations. You're never going to make 100% of the population happy, but we're going to try to work with every family that has a legitimate concern and try to see what we can do to make their experience the best that it can be. But this, some big advancements this year, enhancements as far as the registration goes. And obviously, that just led to cleaner data, which made our routes a little bit better. So, more to follow on that.
Any questions? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we can
Anybody
go.
have questions on transportation?
No.
Second, Dennis had actually just asked about the updated where we are with the branch bank at the high school. So for years, we had a workers' credit union branch at the high school. Last fall, they were notified that they were no longer going to be able to keep that branch open. There was an issue with their insurance. It didn't have anything to do with us in the town. It was the bank themselves. Credit unions don't carry FDIC insurance. They have a different kind of insurance. And technically, to maintain municipal accounts, you have to have FDIC insurance. So they weren't going to be able to maintain Chelmsford accounts. It didn't make it worthwhile for them to maintain that branch. And they vacated sometime over the winter. I don't have the exact date. We did put an RFP out to see if there were other local banks that might be interested in coming and opening and operating a branch bank at the high school. Unfortunately, when we had the bid opening about a week and a half ago, we didn't have any bidders. So Joanna, again, and her staff had sent out the RFP to 20-plus local banks from the area and credit unions, but unfortunately, we didn't attract anyone. So we're now going to have to just kind of reassess where we are with the branch bank at the high school. Might have to just go out and actually have some one-on-one conversations with some of these banks and just see if there are different, some of them have expressed a willingness to still come and do programming in the building, just not actually staff and man a bank at that location. But we're going to go out and kind of figure out if there were any things we can do to entice people if we ever rebid this to make it more attractive to them to consider us. Perhaps, again, I'm throwing this out there, but, maybe staffing it 5 days a week just wasn't financially feasible to them, but doing 2 or 3 days a week is. I want to kind of put the feelers out and see what kind of feedback we get, and maybe be able to modify our RFP, and Joanna loves to do RFPs, so we can get another one out in the not-too-distant future. Third issue, acoustics and sound at Parker Middle School. A couple of staff members had brought forward a concern last year about some of the reverberation within classrooms. We did have a company come out last spring and actually do an assessment of the 4 classrooms that they were receiving the most complaints from. While all 4 classrooms were, again, ranged, one was just above the standard, a couple were on the higher end of what the standards were. We were trying to find a solution to try to control that reverberation within the classrooms. So internally, Brian Curley in our facilities department, some of our custodians at the school, installed some sound-absorbing planks in the ceiling well at the school. And just last Friday, the company came back out again to take new measurements of the sound reverberation, and we're just waiting for those to come back. I can tell you when I was at the school Friday, as they were doing the testing, there was a noticeable difference just in the echoing that wasn't there within the rooms. Again, I can't pinpoint and say if it's enough or it's too much. We're also trying to figure out how much material really needs to be installed, because it's going to affect cost and budget for the project. But just anecdotally, I can tell you, being in the room and talking, you certainly heard less echo in the room we were in compared to the room right next door. So we are supposed to get the results from that testing back next Monday, and depending on what the results are, if this was effective and actually scientifically is going to work, then we will develop a plan and a budget to be able to address the rooms in the building that are over that ANSI standard, just another acronym that we'll throw at you, that I don't even fully comprehend. It's some type of an engineering standard when it comes to sound.
Is it just 4 rooms? Or?
Well, we had tested originally 4 rooms that had been the highest complaints.
Yeah.
So if this actually does work, depending on cost and whatnot, we may have to have the company come in and just kind of like reassess the rooms to see which ones are really problematic. Because if someone's already hitting the standard, you don't want to overkill and add a lot of extra cost and project. But if it's a relatively quick application, and if it's cost-effective to do, we'll just do most of the rooms that are above the standard. A couple of issues on updates for you on parking lots. We talked a little bit at the last meeting. The high school and Parker parking lots were the ones that were tackled first this year. If you recall, at the end of June, they started doing work at the Chelmsford High School parking lot. That work continues. The game plan basically for this school year is if you start at the back driveway near Harrington School and you come all the way down in front of the PAC, all of that material is being replaced. All the curbing and all the sidewalks out in front of the PAC, and even behind the PAC, almost going up to the access road that leads to the fields in the front, that's where they're stopping this year. So that's already been ground up, it's already have the binder coat down, they've installed the curbing, and as Gary indicated, I think weather permitting, and the weather has hurt us the last couple of weeks, the top coat is going on by the end of this week. So that's positive on that front. At Parker Middle School, I didn't get a chance to get over there this afternoon. The binder coat is down, and that's the coat that you can drive on if you had to. And they're actually preparing the curbing at this point. So they're putting the curbing in, and then they're backfilling that, and then they have to put the top coat down. So as it stands now, I believe let me look at the memo real quick. Sidewalks were going in on Monday of next week, and then the top coat on the parking lot is scheduled to go in mid-next week. And that's just a one-day putting the top coat down. So those 2 parking lots should be in good shape. I did mention at the previous meeting, the only thing we are going to be waiting for until about mid to late September is the striping on the parking lots. After the final top coat goes down, you've got to give it about 3 weeks to cure. Some of the oils have to come up through the pavement before you can actually stripe it. So I know Steve and the Deans and Gary, Persichetti and whatnot, we're going to work on just kind of using some pylon cones to just kind of set up rows for the kids and staff to be able to park in for a couple of weeks. And then by mid to late September, we'll be able to go in and line the parking lots and all the parking spots before we get into the winter season. So it's more of just a timing issue. At Center and Harrington, as Gary indicated, the bid for those parking lots, not parking lots, this is the additional spaces, not redoing the existing parking lots, had gone out, and they only received 1 bid that was under budget. They're doing reference checks on the particular company before they actually awarded a contract and then scheduled and figured out a plan for the work. So this is hot off the presses. I did see an email come in earlier today that there may be an issue with the bid dollar amount that the contractor bid because he was significantly lower than the second bidder. So we don't know if there was a piece of the scope that was missing, and Gary is now kind of going back and forth to confirm that and to see if this is still, 1 or 2 of these going to be within budget, or if not, what is Plan B going to be. And that came in after the writing of this particular memo. So I will actually just follow up with an email before the end of the week to the school committee to let them know what the status is. And then we'll obviously communicate with the families for next year and the staff. And I'll put this back on the agenda for our September meeting, just as an update for you for those 2 particular schools. But that's the most I have for you right now tonight. Fifth update was about the new therapeutic program at the South Row. A significant amount of time and planning has gone into this program. Molly McMahon, the principal of the South Row School, Amy Reese, people from the special ed department for the district have spent a significant amount of time promoting and recruiting and hiring the staff for this particular program. So I won't read all of the details here, but we are starting day one with a fully staffed program. We were able to attract a highly qualified BCBA, which is a board-certified behavior analyst, who's going to help oversee the program at the building. We were able to give them a couple of orientation days over the course of the summer where the staff got together to meet each other and actually talk about planning for the program and setup, so I really think they're in great shape. But Katie Hicks is going to be the BCBA to help shape and run the program. We've hired 2 full-time special education classroom teachers for the program, and they're in the process of finalizing the hiring for the paraprofessionals who are going to assist in the program. Internally, our 4 elementary schools have actually identified 4 students who are going to actually begin this program on the first day. So we have 4 internal students in the district. I don't know the grades off the top of my head, but they're elementary level, and they're going to be beginning the program at the school. And then referrals will come in throughout the course of the school year. But I think they're really in great shape as far as where they're at, as far as supplies and equipment and training and planning, and we're going to make sure that they have everything that they need to make that program successful. Once it's up and going, as with all of our other programs over the course of the year, we'll invite you out to different events that are happening at the school so that you can actually stop by and see the effectiveness of this particular program. Molly provided us bios. I'm not going to read them for each of the staff members, just to give you a sense of their credentials, and I think they're in really good shape.
I see we're starting with 4 students.
Yep.
What's the cap?
It honestly is, it's dependent on the need of the child. So this is 2 different classrooms. So it's, technically, 6 to 8 maybe students, depending on, again, need and
Age?
service level. Well, one of the rooms, they're both going to be multi-age rooms, but they're originally set up to be like a K2 and then a 2-4, so there can be a little overlap because you don't know which kids are going to come at a particular time. But, optimally, I'd probably say you're looking at, 6 to 8, no more than 6 to 8 kids per room. There can be some floating back and forth. One of the components of this program is really, this is not like a long-term stay program.
Right.
Children won't be in this program for 3-4 years through elementary school. Our goal is to really have them come in, help them get regulated, learn some of the skills that they're going to need to be successful in the mainstream classrooms, and then integrate them back into classrooms. Originally started as like pieces of the day and hopefully working up to the full day. And then when they're at the full day, being able to possibly transition them back to their neighborhood school when they're ready. We're not going to rush them, but this isn't a program that we're looking to put a child in and then they'll be there through their career in Chelmsford. It's to give them the extra supports and services that they need to get them quickly up to their peer group. Item number 6 is just an update for you on the, it is an upgrade to our food service program at the high school. So a significant amount of work, again, happened at the high school kitchen this summer. We removed a lot of the old outdated equipment, which was in a particular area, giving us room for that new kind of commissary equipment. So the new stoves and machines and the freezing unit, which is going to allow us to be able to produce our own meals to then send out to the elementary schools, is all arriving and being hooked up. So I know our staff has been doing some training, both in the building and elsewhere, on some of this equipment, and they're very eager and excited to get this going. We do have, if you recall, breakfast at the Harrington Elementary School. That was a pilot last year. That's obviously going to continue from day one for the start of this coming school year, and we're going to phase in breakfast at the other 3 elementary schools, and then really push harder for more participation at the middle school and the high school as the fall rolls out. But we're really excited to see how the purchasing is coming. Our van is set to be here the end of this week, hopefully. Because we need that to drive the meals around to the elementary schools. But we really should be in good shape. I know Nancy Antolini has spent a lot of time and effort with her food service staff preparing for this change. She's excited about it, and I'm glad that we were able to support her in rolling that out.
I have one quick question.
Yep.
Are you going to wrap the van?
We actually talked about that. Yeah, not from day one.
Okay.
But
and
we
is
are
it going to be your picture? That's really the second question.
a big face.
Yeah, just a big face. No, we really should wrap
That
the
could hurt food sales.
in the community. I think it would just be good to have,
Yeah. We might do-
district logo roaming around the streets of
Yeah,
Chelmsford.
we might do something fun with
Okay.
the van. Not for day one, because
Yeah.
we have to get it going.
Yeah.
But, no, we have actually talked about that.
We could do Dennis King, we could have a rotation of pictures, of faces.
Yeah, we're going to avoid faces.
All right.
Maybe a lion head or something.
I think the
but,
lion would be really good, though.
We'll do something fun. And just a last little update on where we stand dual enrollment-wise. So we're going to be rolling out that dual enrollment program at the high school this fall. Very excited about that. We ended up having 5 course offerings, or 5 individual courses. Sociology, we actually were offering 3 sections of sociology. But we have, those are our enrollments as of, actually, they were hot off the presses yesterday. So we've got 162 students who are potentially going to be eligible to participate in that. One thing I mentioned this, I don't know if it's 162 individual students. Some of the students may be taking multiple classes. So I'll get that data. It didn't dawn on me when I originally asked, but I'll get that data for a follow-up report this fall. But I think it's exciting. We're really going to track these kids right out of the gate to be able to report on them, and also be able to report in future years about potentially how much, obviously there's a cost for taking the credits, but it's nominal, and how much potentially it's saving for the child going off to college. So I think it was a great, we're excited about the teachers who've stepped up to do this. We've got 5 good offerings out of the gate. It's only going to continue to expand, and to be able to have 162, courses potentially be awarded college credit is, I think, a very good start.
I
So.
was going to ask, how was the response from the teachers? A lot of people volunteer
I
to
mean,
take this on, or?
I think they were a little nervous at first because they didn't understand all the requirements. So it's, you're always going to have that shaky ground. But then once we establish this and they understand the professional development that goes with it, I think it's going to really take off. And once we establish some of the pathways for students, so we know who's taking what classes, it will just bubble up.
Yeah. They get a lot of support from the college in doing this.
Yeah.
And I think once they actually seeing it in place too, our teachers work incredibly hard, and the vast majority of their courses are already probably at that level to qualify. So it's not going to be that much more work on the teachers' part. And I think they're going to appreciate the support from the college. So it'll be good.
Safe to say it's 162 slots.
It's 100, well, there are, yes.
Those students are all eligible to
Right.
take it.
Right.
Right.
Now, they have to register
Okay.
with MCC.
Right.
But only students that are eligible to take MCC classes are in those classes.
Okay,
You see what I'm saying? They met the criteria. I mean, I can't, I'm sure there's going to be some reasons why some students don't take it, but I can't imagine why the majority of them wouldn't take it.
And the only thing I was trying to point out is, it might not be 100, I'm sure it's not 162 actual students. A student might be taking pre-calculus and sociology.
Right.
Right.
So they're double counted there if they're
Yeah.
taking 2
They'd be
classes.
taking all of those for all we know.
Right.
Some alumni that would be interested in this.
What's that?
I said I know some alumni that might be interested in.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, no, but we'll continue to track this and we'll report it out. I think it's a good story. So all of these kids are eligible for the courses, and we're going to obviously work with them to make sure that they sign up and take advantages if they can.
All right, any questions? Thank you for all the updates, I know a lot of.
No,
loose
I know
ends
they
here.
were
It's
kind
gonna
of
tie
quick ones,
them
but
up,
just to
yeah.
tie up a lot of
Yeah.
loose ends as
Yeah.
we're getting into the school year.
Absolutely.
Next report is just the activity report for the month of July, our personnel report from the Personnel Office, just outlining our new hires, some resignations, retirements, and then a few assignment changes within the district. July and August have been incredibly busy as far as the recruitment and onboarding of new staff. It's felt within the HR office, who's kind of working overtime to make it all come together. We actually have new teacher orientation tomorrow. And then the business office also feels the back end because they're processing the payroll for all of these staff. So significant amount of work being done. But we really look like we're in very good shape for day one.
Where are we on the guidance position?
That one, I want to say that the 10 days, is it Wednesday or
Yeah, it hasn't
Thursday?
even been-
It hasn't closed yet, so that's,
Okay.
so we're not quite there yet. We're going to start screening the candidates who at least have already applied online, and setting up some interviews, either for the end of this week or early next week, to get a look at who's there. But I do think it's going to have to be a couple of rounds of interviews, and we're probably
It's a
still.
key position.
It's a key one, but we're probably still a couple of weeks
Yeah.
away.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else in the personnel report? Good?
Yep.
All right, next we have policies.
Policies.
Yep.
Yes, you have two policies and two sections in front of you this evening. The first one, Section J, we're going to actually review probably at the next school committee meeting. But there was one policy that I'm asking you to pull out. It was the one on student absences and excuses. We've been working with Felicia from Andy's office to review some of our policies. And if you look at the online one, obviously it doesn't help if you're looking at the black and white one, but if you're looking at it online, Felicia is recommending adding the last paragraph in the first section where it says there may be need, excuse me.
There may need to.
There may need to be exceptions to the district student, that paragraph. She added in basically to be in compliance with some of the special ed regulations and also anti-discrimination regulations. So we just, the regular policy is what we already looked at and reviewed with MASC, but she's asking for that paragraph to be in. And I'd much rather, before the school year starts, just have this policy be approved. I'll still include it in the J packet for the next school committee meeting, but we'd like to just get that approved this evening as a standalone, so that day one, we can actually have that be in effect and not get caught in any technicalities.
And it is JH, I know the memo says J.
Yeah, my memo was wrong, I'm sorry.
Can we just, if this is approved, when this is approved, can we just make sure that if, for students who are identified as possibly having attendance issues, that we include this part and the additional information of their IEP, so that it's right there and, you know, we've identified them as a student who may need an exception. Does that make sense? And so that it's, you know, so it's, we're looking at it on a student-by-student basis, but.
No, it's definitely student by student, and well, we're going to actually, even aside from just the, like special ed or 504
Right.
students, we're going to try to streamline some of the communications to families this year around absences.
Okay.
And similar to, like Lowell, it's almost automated. If a particular person's out so many days,
Yep.
they get the automatic email or the letter. We haven't done that here yet.
Yep.
So we're going to try to put some of those safeguards in place so that X2 is actually on a daily basis, identifying kids who maybe, you know, have hit that 5 consecutive unexcused absences, and it's triggering like a letter home or an email home, and also a flag for the dean or the principal, the assistant principal, to be able to kind of flag, well, this student's been out for 5 days, you need to check into that and find out, you know, what's going on. But we can do that, and I can also speak with Amy just on the 504,
Yeah.
the standardized form that comes out. Maybe there's a place to just have that be kind of hard-coded in.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, under the additional information, just so that for those students who may be, you know, struggling with attendance, that, you know, that information is documented in their IEP, and we know that they're not necessarily going to be, that there may be an exception made.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, we can certainly do that. I'll work with her to just figure out the best place to put it.
Right.
But I'd almost love it to be more automated than have to remember to put it in.
Right.
Just inevitably, we'll miss it in the person that needed it.
Now, we have to approve this one individually, because we've only been provisionally approving the other ones, right?
I'd like you, if you don't mind, to
Just
approve
approve
this
it
one
straight out.
individually,
Okay.
and then it will be in the larger packet, so that,
Yeah.
you know, we will take on the whole thing.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to approve policy JH.
I move that we approve the policy JH, which deals with student absences and excuses.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
5-0.
Okay, great, thank you. And then section I is a similar review as we've been doing
Yep.
every meeting.
So we'll do the same thing. I'll just go through, read the policy name, and where it came from, and the questions. Great, now we'll move on. All right, so starts with IB, is that correct?
IB.
IB, okay, so first one is IB, Academic Freedom, from MASC. Okay, second policy, IC/ICA, school year, school calendar, MASC. Next, ID, school day, Chelmsford. Next policy IE, organization of instruction, Chelmsford. Policy IGA, curriculum development, MASC. Policy IGB, student support service programs, MASC. policy IGD, curriculum adoption, MASC. IHA, basic instructional program, MASC. IHAI, occupational education, MASC. IHAM, health education, MASC. IHAM-R, health education exemption procedure, MASC. IHAMA, parental notification relative to sex education, MASC. IHAMB, teaching about alcohol, drugs, and tobacco, Chelmsford. IHB, special instructional programs and accommodations, programs for children with special needs, MASC. IHBA, programs for students with disabilities, MASC. IHBAA, observation of special education programs, MASC. IHBD, compensatory education, compensatory, is that right?
Compensatory, yep.
Yeah, Title I, MASC. IHBEA, English language learners, MASC. IHBF, homebound instruction, MASC. IHBG, homeschooling, Chelmsford. IHBH, alternative school programs, MASC. IHCA, summer school, MASC. IHD, adult community education programs, Chelmsford. IIB, class size, Chelmsford. IJ, instructional materials, MASC. IJ-R, reconsideration of instructional resources, MASC. IJL, library materials, selections and adoptions, MASC. Guys, reading all these ones.
Smiling.
IJLA, library resources, MASC. IJND, access to digital resources, MASC. IJNDB, empowered digital use policy, MASC. IJNDC, internet publication, MASC. IJNDD, policy on social media, MASC. IJOA, field trips, Chelmsford. IJOB, community resources persons / speakers, MASC. IJOC, school volunteers, MASC. IK, student progress reports to parents / guardians, MASC. IKE, promotion and retention of students, MASC. IL, evaluation of instructional programs, MASC. ILD, student submission to educational surveys and research, MASC, MASC. IMA, teaching activities / presentations, MASC. IMB, teaching about controversial issues / controversial speakers, MASC. IMDC, school ceremonies and observances, religious holidays, Chelmsford. IMG, animals in school, MASC. I think that's it. That was a long one.
Yeah. The next one is too.
So I think we just have 3 more left.
The next one is a long one.
Yeah, and
That's
then 2 little
J.
ones.
KL are really small.
Yeah.
So,
of the next meeting, do you remember?
September 4th. Oh, you're talking about the
Sixth, no, fourth.
policy stuff?
The policy
No, we don't have any more. We're all
We
done.
got through all.
I thought you meant the school committee meeting.
Yeah, no, we just had to approve the last three. That'll be done.
That's right, it was a short meeting.
So, how would you like to make a motion to?
Yeah, what's the term? We're not.
We've
final
just been kind of
approval.
tentatively approving, provisionally
Provisionally
approving.
approving, yeah.
Okay. I move that we provisionally approve policies in section I.
Second?
Any discussion, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope, abstaining.
No, and if all goes well, at the next meeting, we should do the bigger section J.
Yeah.
And then the second meeting in September, we'll do the last two sections.
Okay.
And then I would think by, October, one of those two meetings, we'll have the whole manual.
Yeah.
And we can work with Andy at that time too, and have him kind of devise whatever vote we should take, and then adopt the entire manual, and then be off and running.
And we're going to host that now on MASC, that was decided.
Correct, we decided last meeting. We did a comparison of the possible options and the costs, and
Okay, that's great.
And it's virtual?
so, yes, very. Yeah. A lot of districts use that. I'd say the majority of districts use it.
My only concern would be that we lose our personality by just coming in, adopting all of MASC's policies and agreeing to just put them on board with every other school system in the state. But I think going through this, we were able to keep quite a few of our own policies that,
Probably a third or a quarter, probably, or
Yeah.
zero. Yep.
Well, so much of it is law now. It's just.
Right,
Right.
right, yeah. And this thing with MASC, if the laws change, then we can make changes.
Right.
All right, any liaison reports? Not yet, it's coming up.
Come.
Next
I
month.
just inform people that, again, this year, the Chelmsford Rotary is providing backpacks for students' need. And I'd like to thank Linda and other people in the administrative office for having the piles of
Love it.
supplies
Love it.
that came in. And you can get in touch with me about,
Yeah, we'll
Putting
get the
it
kids to
together.
put those together again, and then we'll distribute them out.
but Gwen Paquette, who's the scholastic book person for this whole Northeast, was able to facilitate getting the materials. And so each package, with the backpack, all kinds of pens and all that sort of thing in it and everything, she was able to do it for $16 a unit. You can't even get a backpack for that, so she did a great job. Well, the other thing, I just so you know, I worked with Mrs. Moreau from the high school and all of the Student of the Month appearances at Rotary and on the Lions Pride, and it's all scheduled for the year.
Oh, great.
Anybody else, liaison? Any action items, new items?
something that I'll have to follow up with.
Yeah, I forget what it
I
was.
don't remember what it was.
So one of the things was Barbara requested the class size for kindergarten for the upcoming school year. Also, she requested that we figure out how to notify the public about posting agenda items someplace on the website. And then, and that was it, actually.
Oh, I just found,
Yes, was an update on labor issues.
I just found, it's just taking forever to load.
Before too long, we should schedule going out into the community, after school gets going for a time.
We will.
Well, Barbara's looking, just one other reminder.
It's not going to load. I'll email it to you
Okay.
again.
All right, next meeting, I'd like to try to start formulating some new goals for the next year, or this year we're in now. So if anybody has any ideas, kind of along the same lines, ones that are related to the strategic plan, and then ones that are related to our operations of the committee. So if anybody has any ideas, shoot me an email, kind of put together a document for next time, and we can talk about it and decide what we want to do going forward. All right, anybody else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. 5-0.